Oh, I got everyone on there. Sorry, Jared, I need to introduce you. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Echo Chamberlain live stream, where my face is half obliterated by early April sunshine. Let's not muck around and bring on the guests. Despite repeated entreaties and then threats by me, my first guest stubbornly refused to acknowledge and compensate me as I would like, and so I levied a $1 appearance fee for him to be on the stream, a protectionist action that led to the market futures forecast cratering, and then the S&P 500 losing $4 trillion worth of financial assets in the space of an afternoon. Worse still, my first guest declared he would be launching a retaliatory $1 appearance fee to be on this live stream, sparking panic selling on the NASDAQ stock exchange and leading to a contagion of investor panic around global markets. With the impending threat of a massive recession, is my first guest going to back down, or will he dig in at the expense of international fiscal security and countless livelihoods? Here with the answer is Mr. Greg Owen.
Good to see you, sir. I will have that dollar. Actually, that's why the show is late, because I had to charge a 10-minute tariff in order to appease my own ego. So sorry about that. It's just the way it is. It's winning.
It's winning, yeah. I like it when I was in America and just ordering a pizza at a restaurant, and I just looking at the receipt, and there's like a tax, state fees, local county fees, some sort of other accruity or acuity, and then one other little thing underneath that, and then plus tips on top of that. It's endlessly fascinating to me.
It is. It's odd. It's very, very strange how we do it. It's a lot of, yeah, I don't know.
And now we're doing it on a global scale. It's great.
We're just gonna go back and forth, and I don't know. It's it's so confusing because I don't even know what it's supposed to do, and I don't think anybody else does either, because of the way that it's been explained by the administration. Is that it's doing things, it's doing conflicting things at the same time. But
well, I got 48% in high school economics, so I don't know what's going on. So I'm gonna have to rely on you guys to explain it to me.
You got me.
Oh well. My next guest first emerged into prominence as the public nuisance and upstart of Ballymoney, and after years of rabble-rousing, rose to be known as the scourge of Ballymena. After that, he was spoken of in terrified whispers as the taskmaster of Temple Patrick, and then, after ruthless maneuvering and dispatching of adversaries, he took on the moniker of Overlord of Dunnamuggy, and today he is feared and respected as the Despot of Antrim. Did I pronounce any of those things correctly?
You actually did. You got them all right. Yeah.
I thought it'd be Dunnamuggy.
Soon I'll be dictator of UK.
No, one step at a time.
Soon. It needs to happen soon. I was planning to make it longer, but things are they're proceeding apace, and I think the UK needs me. I swear to God, man, it can't get any worse. You may as well just hire me as dictator.
Well, yeah, it's interesting to me. Like, who is getting worse between America and the UK? It just seems like so dismal between the two of you.
Do you know, South Korea is doing pretty badly at the minute economically, and there's so much shit going on over here that I find it quite difficult to pay attention to anywhere else. Like there were well, I'm not getting into it, but yeah, not good anywhere really.
Are you going to be able to get a Switch? Because I can't get a Switch right now. That's the real.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
I don't know if I would get a Switch. I might just boycott it out of principle, and it's not due to price, because a lot of the price increase is due to inflation. It's the paywalling, and they have this. This was the most disgusting thing. They got this. It's called a code card or something, and basically So how it worked with the old Switch was you bought a game, and in the game is a little. I'll just show you. So here's a Switch.
Yeah, a little SD card up thing in there, right?
You've got your little game card. Now this card contains the entire game. All right, that's Pikmin 4, by the way. That's a good game. And with the new one, they sell the same packaging. So they'll sell these with a card, but the card is just a download license. it doesn't contain any game information. So all it does is allow you to download the game from Nintendo's server, and it still takes up space on your Switch, on your 256 gigabyte Switch, and none of that information goes onto the card. It's literally just a download code on a card. Like, why would you do that? That's just disgusting. And then the little E button, which its functionality is that it allows you to chat with other users, but you can only use it if you're subscribed to Nintendo Switch Online. So they have literally paywalled a physical feature on their console. It's just some of the stuff they're doing is so
starting next year. I mean, your first hit's free, and then you get used to it, and then they paywall it. So it's actually so much fucking worse.
The reason they've launched it with Mario Kart is because they want to shove all of their users into the subscriber model straight away, because everyone's going to want to play Mario Kart Online, and they know, okay, well, if we can just launch it with that, we're going to get everybody online, we're going to get everybody as a subscriber, and then all the games will follow after based on that model. It's really fucking scummy. Like, it's Ubisoft scummy what they're doing.
I'm interested to see how that voice chat is going to go, because I have said some things when I feel unjustly hit by a blue shell after just nothing but skill. First place deserved, and then that cheap shit. I've said some things I'm not proud of, and I don't think that I would want those on the internet. I don't think that I want them recorded. I'd be real interested to see how that voice chat goes. I think so good some slurs. That's all I'm saying.
With the tariffs, the first thing that blew up on Twitter, which is the most Twitterish thing ever tweeted, is that it was the video game getting delayed that went. That was the thing that blew up on Twitter. Yeah. Oh well. Now then, well, today's featured guest attended an elite English prep school where he was singled out for his ebullient and natural talents for the stage. After flourishing as a young chorister, he was cast in a run of the Magic Flute for the prestigious Glyndebourne Festival. He and two other boys played the three spirits who were lowered in a fancifully decorated balloon, singing from the basket, dressed as three little 18th century courtiers in powdered wigs, silk stockings, and buckled shoes. And then, for their second appearance, drifting across the stage in a quaint airship with a slowly twirling propeller like something out of Jules Verne or Georges Méliès, drawing risible appreciation from the audience. Later, he was cast as Miles in a production of Turn of the Screw, where he endeared himself as a boy alto in a Victorian broadcloth jacket with a bow at the neck, knee-length trousers, and dark stockings. Tragedy struck, however, when a sandbag dropped from the rafters, striking him and displacing several vertebrae, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. After decades of resentment, declining personal fortunes, and physical and psychological malaise, he now resides in a cheap flat above a laundrette in Dagenham, and he has a special iron bedstead installed to accommodate his morbidly obese 400-pound frame, prone to bed sores and ulcers, where he streams from a 14-inch monitor via cheap government-subsidized dial-up internet under a flickering and buzzing strip light, while outside there is often the cacophonous banging of immigrant families dragging tartan shopping trolleys up the flight of stairs due to the elevator being out of order. Here, irrespective of all the hardship, is the little Platoon.
Hello, hello. Sorry I'm late.
No, that's fine.
How are you, sir? Get in real life to your wonderful introduction is that because I did like the musical side of things when it came to school plays and productions. So
that's fantastic.
I played trumpet, which is why everyone else who was on the stage trying to be the center of attention, and I was behind a curtain blowing horns, which is a good way to set you up for life generally.
That's fantastic. Well, I understand that you and Greg were streaming yesterday, so just in each other's faces now all the time.
We're just hanging out together.
Yeah, good to see you again.
You as well.
All right. And even better, you're going to be talking about exactly the same thing.
Oh,
yes.
So, Greg, lead us off, because I understand that you took the entire brood to the cinema, which gives us a fantastic, perfectly itemized demographic breakdown of how this film was received. But just before you do that, the final numbers were 162 million domestic and over 300 million international from a budget of 150 million. What an absolute smash. Unbelievable. And no one saw it coming. The projected forecast were 50 million, or around 50 to 80 million for the opening weekend. So no one saw it. And we can be cynical all we like, but what's wrong with a big popcorn film for the masses that's kind of dumb and colorful? That's part of entertainment. And if it's a big success, that's great. But there's also another weird little thing where there's Warner's sympathy. Like, I'm so glad that Warner's had a big hit. Like, why do we care about a huge soulless corporate icon or entity like that, whether it rises or falls? So I never understood that. But anyway, tell us what the brood thought.
The evening that we saw it, which was Saturday night, everybody was generally positive. I mean, nobody thought it was the movie of the year, but everybody had a good time. We had some laughs. We had a fun time as a family. My older kids, I think their expectation was that it was going to be basically unwatchable. So the fact that it was not, they were like, well, it meet expectations. So that's good. They were nice about it. What was odd is that I've been busy and I didn't get a chance to interview everybody like I normally do to make a review. And so it wasn't until Monday night before last night's show, I asked everybody real quick, hey, what were your scores, whatever. And everybody was about a 6. So 2 days later, the mood already was dropping off for the kids. They were having trouble remembering order of events or like what their favorite part was. There's pretty much 2 or 3 parts that they all kind of remember, and the rest is pretty hazy. So it was interesting that I was busy and I was able to see the difference between right after walking to the theater and a couple days later where they're like, I don't remember what. My 5-year-old couldn't remember a single part that she liked. She said she liked it, but she couldn't remember. It took her a minute to even remember what happened in the movie at all. So it's, to answer your question, I don't think there's anything wrong other than the fact that it's going to make a ton of money and we're going to get more of this. And so that could be a problem later. But, sometimes I think sometimes you want a good novel and sometimes you want a beach read. And that's okay. I'm not mad at people for that. But
was there any in your brood who have their own little, that heavily ironic young person nostalgia where they used to play Minecraft 2 or 3 years ago, so it was a kind of little throwback for them?
So my boys also play it. So it wasn't like an ironic throwback. It was, we like to play Minecraft with each other and our friends all the time, and we want to go see a Minecraft movie. And their number one complaint was that it breaks the rules of they were not happy about that. They were like, you can't just combine shit from the real world and make a tot gun. That's not how Minecraft works. You can't just make things up. There are rules. Like they were mad about it.
Yeah. Boys can be the most doctrinaire people in humanity at a certain age. Like, if they feel slighted or something is wrong, it is the whole world comes to a stop. So I can understand that.
But it's not a good movie, but they're all right. The 9-year-old still thinks it was great, but everybody else was like, yeah, okay, it was all right. Didn't hate it. Probably won't watch it again. They're not upset or anything, but it's extremely forgettable. And to me, it's like the Mario movie. That's how I feel about it. And people will say, well, the Mario movies are better than this. And I think, okay, fine. The Mario movie's a 4. This is a 3. Are we going to quibble about which piece of shit is better than the other piece of shit? Like they're both lazy, terrible movies, and they're going to make $1 billion. And I don't know why we're arguing over which slop is better than the other slop. But it's a slop movie. It absolutely is. It's lazy. It's phoned in, and that's all it is.
Well, if I was 9 or 10 and I had no familiarity with Jack Black, I'd probably think that he was really super funny and cool. And Jason Momoa, he'd probably be awesomely funny as well. So, I'd probably have a good time.
And they did. I think the issue is that this is it's a little kid's movie. The humor is very much 9-year-old boy. Like there's a lot of butt jokes. There's a lot of, it's just slapstick. It is a little kid's movie. But the thing is, Minecraft came out 15 years ago. So there are full-grown adults that are looking back on this, not ironically, but with genuine nostalgia. This was a thing that consumed a lot of their teenage years. And some of them are old enough. They have kids. It's something they want to share. Like this is a 15-year-old game. It crosses generations. They want to share this with the next generation, their own children. And I think that it's kind of from that regard, I'm not mad at a slop movie, but I also think that this particular property had the potential to be like a whole family movie. It had the potential for fathers and sons. Like, yeah, this is what I used to do. This, you can still play this game. It still exists. When I was your age, it was, we didn't have all these other, you could have that whole kind of there is so much potential there. And this lazy phoned in crap, I think, is a disservice to what this could have been. And that's the real complaint that I have. Slot movies are slot movies. It is what it is. That's fine. They happen all the time. This just really should have been more. It deserved to be more. And it's this. I compare this to the Paw Patrol Mighty Pups from last year. Like, I'm not mad at that movie either. I knew what it was. It's just that's what it should have been, and this should have been something better than that.
Well, on that note, you can take like a big entertainment, like kids product, and you can have fun with it, and you can get super meta with it, and you can even get a tiny little bit of, pathos or poignancy in there as well about growing up and themes like that, like the Lego Movie. That went to a surprising other level, especially towards the end where it became kind of meta like that. So you can do it. Maybe they could have found a way somehow to do this, but they probably thought we couldn't be bothered. And so I guess it is what it is. Yeah. Despot, have you seen it?
No, it's not out in South Korea yet. It's not out until the end of the month, actually. So it's going to make a ton of money in America and in the West, and then it still has big markets in the East to open to. So it's going to make all the money.
That's crazy.
It is interesting to me, though, that the video game curse doesn't seem to have been broken, because it was always regarded as a genre where, if it's a video game movie, it's going to be just B-movie garbage. Now it's A-movie garbage, but it's still garbage. It does occur to me, though, that you can make a good video game movie, but it has to be a meta movie like Tetris. It's not about the video game itself. It's about the process of, in the case of Tetris, acquiring the rights. Doesn't sound very exciting, but it turns out to be a great movie. There's really great movies there, like Doom Guys is a fantastic book which talks about the process of how these 4 guys who were working at this shitty software company basically quit and formed a game studio and eventually made Doom. It's a great story of young male ambition. It's fantastic. There's other great stories in that video game world. You could do E.T. and the Fall of Atari. E.T. was this disastrous, famous flop. They couldn't sell them, so they took them out into the desert and buried them because they didn't want to pay the storage fees, and Atari couldn't afford the storage fees. They were going broke, and there was this.
And those chemicals are still leaking into the soil.
There was this fantastic court case. Basically, Atari had this problem. Their hardware was very easy to manufacture games for, and it wasn't coded or locked like they are today or anything. So basically, everyone in their basement was making Atari games and just flogging them over to shops, and shops were selling them to customers. So like if a kid said to his dad, "Hey daddy, I want the new Atari Batman game," which was the AAA game, dad would go to the shop and then he'd say, "Oh wow, I can, instead of the $30 Batman game, I can get all these I can get 7 $2 games," which were made by some guy in his basement in his underpants. So Atari were struggling with this, and they went to a judge and said, "Look, judge, you can't manufacture games for our console without our permission." And the judge said, "No, yes you can. This is America. This is a free country. People can do what they want." And it put Atari out of business. It's a great story, and having E.T. in there, the rise, and Atari deserved to fall. They were a horrible company. They treated their developers like shit. So the rise and fall of Atari is another great story waiting to be told. But I'm not. I don't think that you can make a good movie or even show with video games. I didn't like The Last of Us Season 1. I thought it was very patchy. I thought that Fallout, while certainly not the worst series, it's bad. And I mean, am I wrong? Have they done a good video game movie or series?
Mortal Kombat.
They're all shit. Sometimes it's ironically shit. Like Mortal Kombat's great because it's just a good time. Like the last movie, not the 90s one. The 90s one's also great for similar reasons. But I mean, they're all bollocks.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. Well, part of the issue is that you either get people that are too invested and they're not good storytellers, but they love the game, or you get people who refuse to let their actors play the game, so they don't fully understand because they want to put their own spin on it, right? And so that, I can't. I think The Last of Us is the closest I can think of to a good one. Like there were parts that were good, there were parts that were adapted faithfully, and that game had a story that you could adapt. The big issue with games is that a lot of what you think of when you're like, that was a great game, a lot of what you think of is the gameplay. And that's part of the unique storytelling medium of games, is that you control the character, you interact with the story. Even if it's scripted, you're still pressing the button so you feel like you're interacting with it, and translating that to a screen and then getting all the gameplay out of the way. And all you're left with is the story. Oftentimes games they either have so much story that you can't condense it. Like Japanese RPGs are famously sprawling, and there's no way to condense that down. Or you don't have a lot of story and all you had was really cool gameplay, and you take that away, and then what do you have? So they're extremely. Somebody said they need to be animated, and that's a big thing too. Is they want to make them live, and that's hard to do as well because you're trying to replicate the physics and the unreal nonsense that happens in a game, and you want to try to replicate that like Doom did, the '90s Doom, or the early 2000s Doom rather, with Carl Urban, and it just looks funny. It looks silly and goofy.
Yeah. So Platoon, you famously went to the cinema to see a Minecraft movie, and after about 29 minutes, you stood up and signaled to the projection booth, and then it flickered to a stop. So you could go home and then do a stream, and then go back to the cinema afterwards, where for some reason the Sluts Lights guy was, he had a 20-second interruption of the film after that as well. So now that you've seen the whole thing, what were your thoughts?
Well, we also only realized after Open Bar that the cinema had been showing the unfinished cut of the movie, which was doing the rounds, the one without the complete VFX, which is why it looks better and more distinctive than the theatrical version does, because now I've seen both of them. I know which one I prefer. It's video games, they're in this slightly awkward place because there is still a generation of people, I think, for whom video games are just synonymous with silly, dumb kids' entertainment where people mash buttons and stuff happens, numbers appear on the screen. And that's like the older generation of movie people who just don't take them seriously as an art form. Like there's been a big push to try and get video games recognized as art over the last few years. Well, probably the last few decades, to be honest. And some progress has been made, but there is still a generation of people who doesn't understand that. And if those people now go and see the Minecraft movie, they will come away completely reinforced in their belief that video games are just dumb shit for kids. And really, why am I even letting my kid waste money on this stuff? Which is a massive disservice to something like Minecraft and any other narrative-rich game. The second problem then is that as we've had the development of very narrative-rich games, lots of the best writing quality you see these days is coming from video games, not from Hollywood. It's not properly appreciated in Hollywood. Hollywood people are pretty shit at this kind of thing, and as has been mentioned, they tend to like putting their own spin on things. So even when you do get a game which has a story already, and even a game like The Last of Us, which has kind of been written to be a film, to be honest, with some gameplay attached to it, whenever it comes to an adaptation, there is still a compulsion to add something new. So Fallout comes out, for example. Fallout has a brilliant story, a huge amount of lore, but modern Hollywood thinks, you know what, that's not good enough. Why don't we add some communism? And then we get the Fallout show that we get, which is just absolutely asinine. So we're kind of stuck in this really awkward place where actually, for video games, it's not necessarily so bad, because if you want the best video game stories, you go and play the games these days on the assumption that Hollywood will do them a disservice. The Minecraft movie is only going to perpetuate this, though, because it's proven to movie theaters, movie studios, that all you need is to have the IP rights, and that's it. Just put recognizable stuff on the screen, put a recognizable actor in it who isn't playing a character, they're just playing themselves, use some very, very lowbrow jokes, and people will flock to see it, and no one will remember anything after the fact, which is great. Low effort, easy money. So we'll have a dozen more Minecraft movies, we'll have a dozen more Mario movies, which, though was better than this, I think was about as little as it could get away with in terms of story. So we're going to see a depreciation in the appreciation of that's a stupidly clunky way of putting it. We're going to see a depreciation of the quality of video game adaptations, I think, on the back of this, because it's just shown that no effort needs to be put into it at all. If you want to have an imagination, see imagination on the screen, see stories faithfully told, go play the games and hope that your parents allow you to do that after they've seen the absolute shit that is put on the big screen for them.
I have one little tiny touch of actual nostalgia myself, where they had I forget who the electronic band was from 2007 or something, and it was like that "Enjoy Yourself, Take Only What You Need from It" song.
MGMT.
That took me back. Yeah, that took me back a little bit, to a certain phase of life. So that was kind of nice. Who was the main character of this film?
There isn't one, is the short answer to that question. The slightly longer answer is that there are two main actors in the film, and that's it. That's Jason Momoa and Jack Black, who are playing Jason Momoa and Jack Black. That's about as far as you get. What you think would be the main character, the kid, is not. He's not a character. He just has a single facial expression and a lisp, and that's kind of it.
Right. Is it so designed so that whatever your age happens to be, you can just find your own avatar among, say, either Jack Black or the kid, and that becomes your avatar depending on the age or your visual protagonist, So maybe that's how they did it. Why is there a sister in it? Is she completely extraneous?
Yes.
As is the black woman. The movie actually knows that they're useless and splits them off at one point because it doesn't know what to do with them. And so it just sort of sets them to the side, because even the folks making this were like, we don't know. You guys need to just be off to that while we focus on these three guys here who actually are going to have a motive and want to do something, as thin as it is, that they, at least it's something is better than nothing.
It is it's the most obvious example of 4-quadrant casting you're ever likely to see in a film. Like, most of these people are not there to play characters. They are there because the studio thinks they will be a kind of avatar for the section of the audience they're targeting, but it doesn't really understand anything about them. It doesn't understand the audience. It just understands what they look like. So, like, you get the happy black woman who is a realtor who also likes animals. So that's her shtick. That never actually finds its way into the story at any point, except as a gimmick. But it's there to try and, as I said yesterday, trick unsuspecting black people into thinking this is a movie for them. Same thing with the older teenage girl who they try to have like a backstory with the kid. The backstory is that they're sitting in the car driving to the town, and she says, "It was our mother's dying wish that we moved to this town," or at least that's how I interpreted it. Then there is a scene later in which the movie like tries to pretend that this is an important character beat. Like, you see them put a photo down with the mother in it, and the music is all sad, and you think to yourself, "Oh, I wonder where this story's going," and then it just stops and doesn't go anywhere else. And then, as Greg says, they just separate them off. The kind of the overall message of the movie is very confused, because it kind of throws in random lines about, well, in this world you can be creative, but the real world doesn't reward creativity. And the Minecraft movie is a fine example of that. But then, so like each of them kind of has a dream. Jason Momoa was a video gamer. The kid is generically creative. Happy black woman has a mobile zoo. The teenage girl has nothing until roughly halfway through the movie. She starts punching evil pigs. And then happy black woman says, "Hey, you're really good at fighting. Where did this come from?" And she says, "I don't know." And then the resolution to her dream at the end of the movie is she opens a self-defense class. And it's like, okay, that's you started off with a dead mother, and now you're teaching people self-defense, and you've had one scene to justify this. I don't think you're a character.
I love Greg. The black audience is known euphemistically as the urban market. That's one of my favorite American euphemisms. I love that.
The diverse market.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's Minecraft.
There's whole ass scenes missing. Like, this is the thing, is the whole kid creativity thing. What killed me is I thought I missed something, because the kid creates a whole jetpack on his first day in class, and then the other kids like try to sabotage it. Like, this is an 80s Revenge of the Nerds movie for some reason. Like a kid who made a whole jetpack and welded it together and it like actually works would not be the king of school, but they're going with that. And then in the middle of the movie, the sister tells Jack Black, "Well, being creative gets you made fun of." And the kid looks all sullen, like he's just been stabbed in the heart for some reason. Like, it's a real dramatic response. And then the only other connection is at the end of the movie, where she gives him this emotional speech, like, "Your creativity, I didn't realize what it meant. And oh my God, it's so mad. I didn't see it before." And like, there's no connection between her and Jack Black offhanded remark about creativity not being recognized and this super emotional, "I didn't realize how special you were." Nothing in between there at all. But the movie acts like there was all this setup. That's the whole movie, is scenes that are supposed to mean something, and the music tells you they mean something, and you're thinking, did I miss the part that this talked about, or no, it just comes out of nowhere.
Well, speaking of that, this is an imponderable thing, so you guys have to explain this to me, because I have no context for any of this. In effect, all that matters is Plut's read of the gay aqua twat. I didn't know he was gay until Fat Black and he had sex in the movie. What on earth does that mean?
Yeah. I now wish I might even, because I've not recorded my script yet. Gay aqua twat is a good name. I might steal that one. He's described in my script as coming from the 1980s, which is about as close as I've got to it, because he's very, very sort of camply dressed, but then the 80s was a very strange decade. The only, I think that's in reference to this one excruciatingly long comedic bit in the film, where they're flying away from some pigs on some hastily spawned flying wings, which would be really useful later in the film, except that they forget that they have them. And they have to go through a small hole to escape the pigs, and then they sort of flip around to do a manned sandwich, I think they call it, and it's basically an extended 69ing kind of joke. between him and Jack Black. And you kind of think, well, okay, for maybe 10 seconds, I'm not going to laugh at this, but I can see how some people would. It's just that it lasts for about 7 minutes. And by the end of it, you're just thinking, please kill me. This is just awful. What is this? Why are we doing this?
That was the most imponderable message I've seen since Vex's tweet about the Whatever podcast, where I also had no context whatsoever. Anyway, we must move on from this.
Well, just very quickly, if I may, like there is the
ahead.
resolution to the movie, which is not at all set up at all by the movie itself, but the moral lesson at the end of this film is kind of similar-ish to the one that you find at the end of Ready Player One, which is the other sort of a big video game-related adaptation, which was basically to say spending time in games and being creative in games is worthless, and you shouldn't do it. Says the Minecraft movie of all things. So at the end of it, they all go back through this portal that they could have gone back through at any time preceding, but chose not to for some reason. And they have a scene where, because Steve, played by Jack Black, has been living there for ages, and there's supposed to be this like moral dilemma that they have, so that the kid has the option to stay here in the fun world or go back to the real world. And he not being a character has no reason to say one way or the other, so he says, well, fuck it, I'm just going to go home. Jack Black's character is told, why don't you apply some of your creativity in the real world? You know, be brave. Don't be the fat, smelly coward who plays video games. Apply your skills in reality. I'm just thinking, like, that's a massive disservice to people who've done brilliant things in Minecraft and who then have, yes, gone to apply those skills in the real world as well. But one of these things is not inherently more valuable than the other one, even though the movie thinks that it is. And it's a really bizarre note on which to end the film, which I don't think has been properly appreciated by the audience, which lends more credence to the idea that the audience wasn't really watching the film. They were just watching the references. The movie insults them. The movie tells them that the game they play is pointless. So go back to the real world and pursue your dreams. Even if your dreams are insane at the beginning of the movie, like a mobile zoo, a retro gaming store, and making a jetpack, once you've had this transformative experience in the Minecraft world, those same dreams will just suddenly inexplicably work when you go back, because that's how the movie tells you that the real world is the place to be. There's no reason for this to happen. So on top of being insulting, it's also nonsensical. And it's just, it's like, it almost feels like they made a film, they realized they had nothing to say and it was completely empty, and then they just stuck these scenes in right at the end, which if you watch the working cut, they almost certainly did, because there's a bunch of things in there which are either cut from the film because they're too artistic, or there's a bunch of things that are not in there which are added late in the film, which try to give it a theme. And like, they didn't think of the theme before they made it. So lots of this stuff was just, yeah, cut and pasted together in a very, very haphazard fashion.
All right, well, for some bizarre reason, Sam Mendes, I believe it is making a 4-part Beatles biopic where each film is devoted to each member of the Beatles, which seems bizarre, incoherent, and pointless. Like, why would you break it up like that, where you can have so much overlapping material, which makes no sense compositionally? None of these guys look like the Beatles. None of them actually come from Liverpool or anything that would even sound remotely Scouse. So none of them are going to sound like Reaper or anything like that at all. So they have to fake that, which is going to be weird and stupid. There's also so much Beatles material out there, which is already documented and archived and recorded and photographed. And literally you can watch 12 hours of nonstop footage of them making the Get Back album or sessions. So this seems completely pointless. Plus, they're going to do what would be the worst thing imaginable, which is have these actors do their own recorded vocals versions of these songs, which will sound like trash. They're also way too pretty. They're not going to be able to get like that, post-war Liverpudlian grit and the that kind of masculinity is going to get lost, and it'll be kind of a bit pussyish and whims. So this seems like a stupid idea. I'm not going to watch it because there's also something sacrosanct about the Beatles. They're just too big in scale to capture in a thing like this. And why would you want any kind of adjunct films made about it when what's already there is already so scintillating and compelling? There was one fab scholar who described the Beatles as the 20th century's greatest romance. And that's how it should remain, as that it should be historically there. And anything like this is just going to be small by comparison, no matter how much they try to get inside that very sacrosanct cultural sphere. So it seems like a stupid idea, right?
So
Yeah.
are these
Terrible idea.
are these guys supposed to be? Are these supposed to be recognizable names? Are these guys like pop stars or famous actors or some? I'm old, so I don't recognize them. But
I recognize 3 of them. So
Well,
Barry
Paul
Cowan,
Mescal, you'll see from Gladiator. He was in Gladiator 2, I should say. The smaller guy, Barry Keogh, you might recognize him as the somewhat intellectually stunted guy in Banshees of Inisherin, and a few other bits and pieces. But yeah, you were saying this, but
yeah, just those 2. Barry Cowan, he was excellent in Banshees of Inisherin. And then that guy on the right, I don't know his name, but he played Eddie in The Last of Us season, or not The Last of Us, in the Stranger Things season 4. And he was the best part of that show. In terms of like the character, he was the best character. And well, I don't know, Vecna was very good. Anyway, he was great in it. And so I know those 3. I have no idea who the guy on the left is, the rake over there, but it's here's the thing. If I was the casting director or the director of this project and you brought me these 4 guys, I'd say, okay, well, what else you got? You know what I mean? I wouldn't be excited about it. I'd be like, this might work, but I would like to. It doesn't capture my imagination. It's not. This isn't really working for me. But the problem is just the concept is the whole project is flawed in concept. This idea that you're going to make 4 movies, just make a fucking TV show, man. If that's your attitude, if you want to adapt the Beatles, the best source material, in my opinion, is a book by, I think he's called Mark Lewinson, but the book's called
Revolution in the Head.
Tune in the Beatles All These Years. Hold on, let me actually check the name of that author.
I think the best one is Revolution in the Head. I can't remember who the author is, but it goes chronologically. All the Beatles songs that they've done in the studio, and it's full of like the actual musical terminology.
Yeah, I've read that book.
So good.
Yeah, it is good. And you would do, although the thing is that focuses a lot on the music rather than story, whereas the Beatles, Tune In All These Years, focuses very much on the story. It's a very long book. It would take you, I can't remember exactly how long it is, but it's like, it would take you 25 to 30 hours to read it. And I mean, I listened to the audiobook, but it's amazing. It's absolutely incredible book. And it takes you from the Beatles formation up to their first single, right? So it's just their early years. And like Lewinson has been working on the follow-up book for like a decade now. And that would be perfect as season 1 of a television show. Like the last scene is George Martin in the recording booth, and he leans over the mic and he says, "Congratulations, boys! You've just recorded your number 1 single."
Number 1, yeah.
Fuck yeah, that's a cliffhanger. And then you open up season 2 with Beatlemania. But this artsy fartsy fucking film studies student project where we're going to make a 4 Beatles movies, but it's going to be told from a different perspective from each member. Honestly, man, it's the kind of shite I would expect from a film studies student describing his final year project. It's just awful.
Yeah, and so much redundancy of just constant overlap of the material. I mean, would it be the same takes except from different camera perspectives a lot of the time, which would be strangely redundant and kind of pointless?
Exactly. I mean, I know it's the Beatles, but apart from anything else, people are going to watch the first movie and not bother with the other 3, if at all.
Yeah. Would they start with Ringo because he's the least interesting, and then go to George, and then go to Paul, and then go to John?
You'd need to know commercially, if you want to make this is not, I don't see how this is a commercially viable project, but if you did want to make it commercially viable, you have to start with basically Paul and John, because that's going to bring in the audience. And then, you release Ringo last because he's the least interesting member. And then no one shows up and it's a horrible flop, but then George movie also flops. And I mean, John and Paul are going to be separate movies, and geez, talk about overlap. Do you know what I mean? These guys who were writing songs together, really for at least the first third of the Beatles' career, they were writing songs together, and then they started to do it much more separately. But geez, it's not I have no idea how this got greenlit. It's a terrible idea.
That's the only thing that wasn't documented, is that when they were in hotel rooms or each other's houses, and it's Lennon and McCartney sitting on opposite ends of, hotel suite beds. And of course, it was like a mirror. So with Paul being left-handed, It's like their guitars were facing each other like a mirror, and that's how I would do all those compositions. I'm so glad that that's never been captured because I like to have it in my mind. There's also the miracle that they wrote hundreds and hundreds of songs together, but there was no bickering over who wrote what, except for Eleanor Rigby of all songs, which is very strange. John was adamant right towards the end that he had a huge part in it, and all the others said that he had next to nothing. It's the only song out of all of them that they bickered over.
You probably misremembered that, I would guess, because it doesn't sound like a John song. It sounds very much like a Paul song.
Yeah, strange. So anyway, this seems like a dismal idea, and it's too small in the scale of what's already available of footage to look at. And John Lennon, there's tons of interviews in the 70s, and he even recorded massive just audio recordings himself, like diary entries that go on for hours, which you can sift through as well. So it's all there. So I don't know. All right. So since I had a tiny little zeitgeist moment with my era of slop thing, I thought we'd do a final session going through woke. So it's a wake for woke, basically. And we're not fucking around. These are the big hitters. All right. Okay, so strap in. This is going to be rough. So we're like, Virgil is guiding us through the underworld of woke. And there's us. We are here at the ninth circle, way down there at the bottom, as we enter and we go through the worst of woke. This is over 3 or 4 years. So these are the king hitters. All right, here we go. So our first entry is we're going to start in the field of entertainment, and of course, which was worse. So the Bud Light situation, where a trans, influencer is enjoined to promote Bud Light, versus the Jaguar commercial, where a distinguished, iconic English brand is given the weirdest commercial I think I've ever seen. So which of these would you have to say was the worst if we're going through in pure wokeness?
Ooh. I might even be tempted to say Jaguar is actually it does depend on what level we're talking about. The one that's had the biggest impact by far is Dylan Mulvaney and Bud Light. That was kind of like the example of destroying your brand's reputation. But they didn't intend for that to be like a massive publicity campaign. I don't think they sort of sent it as like a little side thing that they were doing to kind of gesture, but they still had their standard arguments. It was then doubled down on by the new owner of the brand, who basically said our core demographic is too male and jock-like and working class and horrible and male. We need to change this. And so that tanked the company and was so incredibly impactful. The Jaguar one, just for on artistic reasons, though, I think is worse, because that took after Bud Light, looked at what happened and decided, no, you know what, we're going to double down and make this our entire brand identity. So I think that's arguably more woke on its own, even if it was less impactful overall.
All right, Greg, thoughts? Because this is tricky. I said we're not mucking around here, so you've got to really think this through.
What's the rubric? The thing that is the most woke, or the thing that did the most damage to woke, or what are we judging on?
Well, I think it's just it's overall. So it's like aesthetically and commercially overall. Aesthetically, commercially, and cultural impact. Yeah.
Yeah, this is because Platoon's right. At first it wasn't on purpose, but then they really leaned into it, which was weird. But the Jaguar thing was planned, and also the timeline of that makes it feel, since it was toward the end, and they tried to high fashion it and shit, and actually I think there's a statement of this is the new norm or something. I can't remember what was in that commercial. I'm gonna go Jaguar on that one, because they planned it. They planned it. They filmed it.
When you think of bear, you think of a man, so the butt works out like that. Adam, how did that thing go? I need to send me a link if you did do the thing. All right, Despot, you probably got some thoughts, I imagine.
Yeah, I actually did an analysis of that Jaguar ad. It's in my next video, and it looks, when you first look at it, it just looks like a random pile of woke bollocks. But I actually sat down and I thought about it, and it does have very clear meanings. It's all very symbolic. Everything's symbolic of something that Jaguar is trying to communicate. And I think I figured out what the ad is. I know what it means.
Right.
I'll not keep you on terrified suspense. I'll just tell you. So basically, they emerge out of a yellow box. The yellow box is meant to symbolize a spaceship, and they're on this pink planet that's literally meant to symbolize a new planet. And what Jaguar are saying is that with our new approach, we are going to new frontiers, just like arriving on a new planet. The freak show, I don't know what they all symbolize individually, but they all have different roles. So old Codger here in red, he represents sort of male and pale as steel. He literally erases himself. And there's a symbol of the American flag behind him, which he also erases because America's evil and white and so forth. And then this sort of race-swapped Pac-Man with this human-shaped tumor growing out of him, he basically symbolizes the emasculation of the brand. He has a man bag and things. And then this creature in orange, Marilyn Womanson, I call they. They represent basically Maoism, the smash the old and embrace the new. So some of them have very clear symbolic roles within the ad. And it's a statement from Jaguar that this is who we are. We're doing something new and bold and stunning, which of course is utter nonsense. Because they are boldly going where every single fucking major corporation for the past 10 years has gone before. That's the overall the meaning of it. And it's so insidious and disgusting when you actually break it down like that and you look at what this ad is intended to communicate. Whereas the Bud Light thing was just this, they sent Bud to a bunch of influencers and he did his wee video on TikTok and it blew massively out of proportion. And I can understand, though. I can understand the reaction from the right because, I mean, I could say, well, my mother had 7 kids. Where's her Bud Light endorsement? Do you know what I mean? If you want to support women, why doesn't she get a Bud Light endorsement? It's just annoying. It's frustrating. Why does this asshole? Let's not get into it. But I understand the anger that came out of the right. They were just. It was like the rock that broke the camel's back. This Bud Light thing, people were just sick of it. They could have gotten away with that a year prior, but people were so sick of the trans thing that it blew up massively. But the Jaguar for me.
So are we going Jaguar on this?
My vote's Jaguar. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, you got me saying it like that. Jaguar.
Surprising. Okay.
Sure.
Moving on to our second. Okay. So trans companion who effectively saves the cosmos because being trans becomes a kind of bridging element where I am one or I am all, and then ending with you're just a something doctor. What was it? A
male presenting.
Male presenting. So there's that
wouldn't understand
versus the transgender hurricane on our screens that was Maestro. Brought in for the new season of Doctor Who. So which one would you go with between these two?
It's the left for sure. It's what's her face? Rose wasn't her name?
I think it was Rose.
That one is so much worse because of all the little. So even before the dumbass speech of something a male presenting doctor would never understand, which the lore. I'm not even a Doctor Who person. I don't even know that much, but I know that he regenerates all the time and has regenerated as a woman. Like a previous season, he was a woman. So the idea that, and we talked about this a few months ago, like the idea that how you look determines what your mindset is, and that he was male presenting, so he doesn't understand, which according to the lore, he's more woman than any trans woman ever because like he actually has regenerated as a woman before. So that was absolutely insane. But even before all of that nonsense, was the out of the way in that episode, every person that Rose met commented on her beauty. So right. Oh my goodness, you're so beautiful. Wow, what a beautiful young woman. Oh, amazing. It was obnoxious. It was the most nonsense. And we talked about this, I remember, because it backfired because of the lore thing. And then also because, and this is what they do, they'll focus in on what is essentially the most negative thing. Like, what is it that is the most negative about trans women? Is that they're not really you don't look like a woman, or you're not really, or they have to do these things. Like, so by focusing in on her beauty, it's really shining a light on the fact that you're not really a woman, so we have to reaffirm it all the time. So it's like this sort of accidental, underhanded, backhanded compliment. And that is what so much woke stuff does all of the time. It's like, look at this black character who's suffering the horrors of being black. It's so terrible, but they're overcoming the struggle, which all black people have been through because they're so terrible and ignorant and underprivileged. They're awful, but that's why we're portraying them as successful. It's like, do you not realize that you're drawing attention and you're actually showing them in a negative light while trying to portray it as pot? It's her. It's fucking her.
All right, so pretty definitive from Greg there. By the way, the first episode of the second Shooty Gatwa season deals with toxic masculinity, so that's something to look forward to. Anyway, Disput, you've probably got some thoughts on this as well, I imagine, because you have a special dark place in your heart for Maestro.
Before I get on to that, though, I just want to say to Greg, the way your glasses frame your face, it really brings out the masculinity of your jawline. You look handsome. You look you're so masculine, man. You know what? I don't care what anyone says. You'll always be a man to me. Okay. I've always thought of you as a man. Just so you know.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Yeah. Just a little moment of sweetness there. That's nice.
It has to be Maestro for me because as fucking insufferable as the trans kid is, and it's just horrifying. I have trans subscribers who comment on my posts sometimes, and I know for a fact that they cannot stand this shit because it just makes them look like a pack of insufferable wankers, and they're not. They're just people with gender dimorphism or whatever it's called. They're not horrible thought police. It just makes them out to be the worst pack of wankers. It's so awful. So it's trying to be pro-trans while simultaneously portraying them as the most insufferable bents on the planet. But she's only he's whatever the fuck that thing is. It's only in the show for a few minutes, so you can just about grit your teeth and get through it. But Maestro, Jesus Christ, this is the worst male performance I've ever seen in anything. It's just awful. It's a guy who cannot act. And he's trying to overcompensate for his complete inability to act and his lack of training, his lack of everything, is just complete lack of talent. He doesn't know what to do in front of a camera, so he just makes loud faces and he screams a lot. And that's his idea of screen presence. And you can tell this guy thought this was going to be huge for him. This is going to be his big moment. And God damn it, he was going to chew up every last second of it. It's just awful. And it was an insult to the professionalism of everyone on that cast to have to be working with this utter fucking moron, wasting their time, prancing around like an idiot. Just awful. Just absolutely awful. And the fact that everyone had to pretend that he was great. They had to pretend that he knew it, that, oh, he's so amazing. People are going to be so blown away by this performance. Meanwhile, they know, Jesus Christ, this is horrendous. It was one of the worst performances I've ever seen.
Whew, jeepers. Okay, Platoon, sort us out.
I have happily wiped most of these things from my mind. I barely remember anything about either of them. The only thing I remember about whatever the monstrosity on the right is that it was just like a typical drag queen act, and nothing from what I remember of it more subversive than that. Like it wasn't so preachy. It was just artless, as many drag acts are. Whereas, as Greg mentioned, I mean, I think the fact that the left-hand case is so very, very and overtly preachy. It just the episode is kind of takes second fiddle to the lectures that it wants to give the audience, and the way it belittles its main character, who wasn't just the main character, but the most popular iteration of that main character to have emerged over the last sort of 50 years. It was, there's no competition in my mind, but that might be because I've just memory holed most of the Maestro stuff.
Yeah, Maestro was horrific. But I think I have to say, on balance, that Rose is the ground zero of dysphoria nonsense. So
wasn't that in the Christmas? Have I got it? Was that one of the special episodes as well? Which is like, so I would say that's probably more damaging as well, right? In the sense that this is the special episodes that are supposed to get people really invested in this new run of the show, and that's what they're presented with first. Is just, this is what everything following is going to be like. I think that probably lost more audience than any individual episode of the Ncuti Gatwa era has done. Even I think that was kind of writing on the wall moment.
I think they're going to go full scorched earth for season 2 of this piece of Doctor Who. They know it's not popular. They know that people don't like all the woke stuff, and they're just going to triple, quadruple the fuck down and just burn it all to the ground.
There's no audience left. Who are they trying to impress except for the 5 people who agree with them? So but there's no risk for them involved in it. I doubt very much whether Disney will renew their funding agreement, and the main actor is probably not coming back after this season. It'll probably just disappear up its own asshole like Velma season 2.
Yeah. Well, but not very kind of you to diss the acting credentials and performing credentials of the 2-time RuPaul Drag Race winner. So, come on. Okay. Well, after that brutal experience. Okay, so Viola Davis, after facing a bit of backlash about the Woman King, says, if you don't go watch this film, then you are sending a message that Black women cannot helm a Hollywood feature. That is the message you're sending. Versus, everything we know about Rachel Zegler, that Snow White, the prince who literally stalks her, and so we're going to, she's going to be more of a girl boss character who does her own thing. So thoughts on these two? Greg, are you familiar with Viola Davis's little speech?
What was it? You got to come out and see. What was the movie she wanted to? You got to come out and see.
The Woman King, which was based on dodgy factual evidence because apparently that tribe had slaves of their own anyway. And she said, she responded to the controversy by saying, if you don't come out and support this film, you are sending a message that Black women cannot helm a modern Hollywood film.
It was worse, wasn't it? It was worse in the sense that the tribe didn't just happen to have slaves of their own, because most tribes did. It was like this tribe basically only existed to take slaves. They were some of the most vicious, rapacious slave takers in an entire continent full of slavery. And then Hollywood came along and said, yes, these are good, modern, progressive icons. Let's forefront the Woman King. Because, they're strong, independent Black ladies who don't take slaves.
So rather than actually accounting or even addressing that controversy, which was the controversy, she went on this other tangent to say, if you don't come out and support this film, this is the message you're sending. So she utterly skipped over it in order to suggest something else, which is even more woke. So it's a woke diversion from some woke problem. That's what she came up with. So Platoon, what are your thoughts?
Funny as that entire episode was, I mean, there is no comparison between that and Snow White, is there? I think if you wanted to embody everything that's currently wrong with a current generation of a particular sort of woman, if not an entire generation generally, everything that's wrong with modern Hollywood, everything that's wrong with Gen Z or whatever she is, like everything is condensed in the very small and slight frame of Miss Ziegler, the Ziegler creature. She just wins any competition for the most woke of the year. She also did infinitely more damage to her own prospects and the prospects of her movie than I think Viola Davis did to The Woman King, which never had prospects to begin with. So yeah, Ziegler is the runaway winner.
Right. Yeah, I agree with Ziegler, because people have said she's getting too much hate, and I in a way agree with that, because she is representative of she's like a teenager that is just getting the chance to hang around adults a little bit, and so is hearing some of the opinions that they have and doesn't really have any context for them, but just figures, I will shout those opinions loudly and I will seem informed and cool and adult-like. And so it's not her. Those are not her opinions at all. And it's indicative of the environment that she's immersed in, that she thought, if I say this, I'll seem cool and hip. And it was just such an amazing indicator that the rest of the public was like, no, we don't agree with any of this at all. And you're all crazy. And it really is just this little tiny bubble of insanity. And she represents that and exposed it. So she's the worst.
I might dissent from that a little bit. I mean, I agree with the fundamental logic, which is that, yeah, she is immersed in this bubble and what she's doing is parroting received opinion. But I don't actually think what she's doing is parroting the received opinion of the adults around her. I think the problem with Ziegler is the opposite. Like she's basically Tumblr come to life. Like what she is formed by the comment section on her YouTube channel, she has a bunch of fans of a similar age who are all confirming each other's delusions, and she is their avatar, and she wants to stand up, and she wants to be their avatar. She thinks that she's cooler and more informed and more awake to the injustices of the world than the adults who are around her, which is why they had to try and send adults like the producer to reprimand her for turning a Snow White publicity campaign into a yet another pro-Palestine screed, which is like, adults don't make quite such immature mistakes, I don't think. So I think the problem is that she's hung around with nobody but children, and children now have self-reinforcing bubbles on the internet, and that's where she comes from.
That's a good point.
Despot, you're still there? You can't turn on your camera, is that correct?
No, I can't turn on my camera. I'm going to go for Viola Davis on this one, just because...
Thank you.
Just because of the history of this tribe of women. I did a video on the Woman King, so I read into the history of it, and it's just horrifying. Basically, the men would go to war from this, I think they were called the Dahomey tribe, and the result was that all the men from the enemy villages would go out to fight their army. And then these slaver women, these women would basically go into the villages and capture whoever was left when all the men had left. So they would capture the women, the children, and they would usually just kill the old people, because the old people were too weak to make the journey, and they weren't worth feeding, because by the time you'd got them to the coast where you could sell them off to, European slavers, it just wouldn't have been worth it, because the old people wouldn't have fetched a good price. So this is genocidal stuff. So for her to go out and accuse people of racism for not supporting a movie which glorifies these genocidal slavers is just fucking horrifying. So absolutely Viola Davis. And as for Rachel Zegler, at this stage, it later emerged that she really is just a bad human being, just a horrible person. But at this stage of her career, I thought of her as, well, of her short-lived career, I thought of her as a dumb kid. So I really didn't care that much.
Well, yeah, I go with Despot because I think Viola Davis combines cultural and historical relativism, butchered empowerment, and also the Bros director tweeting, "It's a shame that people didn't come out to see Bros" element as well. She put all that together in a madcap tangent that was just like a total weird tautology. So I go with her, and it was a particular stridency about it that was quite funny as well. So Chad, it's up to you. Chat, it's V for Viola or R for Rachel as to who's going to go through. So chat has to break the deadlock here. Felonious with Viola. M856, R from Force Dump. More V, this is a split. Couple of R's. V. That's tough. Come on, Cloud, get off the fence. For a different word, V. Oh God, come on. We need a consensus, chat. Let's go. Fucking hell. RV, RV, RV. I'll take the next couple. VV. Put up a poll. Well, I'm not Brownie. I'm not technical enough to do that. Fun with collecting, that's not good enough. God, it's a split decision. Yeah, fuck you, M8566. I'm going Viola. I'm making an executive decision. She's going to go through. All right. Next one. Okay, Dustborn, where with the power of racist language, I think, you can actually affect the gameplay, versus Concord with its extraordinary character choices, including the huge fat woman creature with blue lipstick, which I know you love, Despot, and the other guy who may or may not have been male or female or both in a gigantic blue trench coat. We all remember that. So, Greg, I'll go to you as our games aficionado. This is a difficult one to unpick. Oh, Greg, are you muted? Cannot hear you. I know it's frozen
Greg
too.
Froze. I'll go first. I think Greg might have frozen.
Okay.
Not his internet, just Greg himself has just
He went into a seizure.
Yeah. So basically for me, this one's Concord. I mean, Dustborn's bad because it used Norwegian and EU taxpayer money to make this abomination. And it's, by all accounts, it's an absolutely appalling game. But Concord, just because the amount of money they spent on this piece of shit, it cost $400 million. They spent 8 years developing it. And you just think of all the projects that could have been greenlit and brought to market on that budget. And just it was this Emperor's New Clothes environment where no one was allowed to criticize anything. So it wasn't just that it was woke, it was appallingly managed. And it's a cautionary tale of what happens when you use the power of the sort of the cultural zeitgeist to your advantage to shut down all criticism. Sort of, if you don't like this or if you criticize this, you're racist or fatphobic or, there's some other label we'll throw at you and we'll have you fired. So it was it's just immoral. But the whole concept and the production of this game is immoral. And then Sony were stupid enough to go and they actually bought the studio that made this. I forget their name. Firewalk Studio, I think they were called. They bought Firewalk Studio for a lot of money. I can't remember how much, but it was in the hundreds of millions, I think. And then they spent several $100 million developing this game. So just a gigantic money pit. And it's shocking that they thought this could ever do anything at market, that any gamer would want to play as these utter atrocities. So for me, it's Concord.
But I just feel, Greg, that the Dustborn went to a new level of inventiveness when it came to stupid ideas, contrivances, pure flakiness, and putting it into a game. It was a new order of magnitude, I thought.
So it was trying to dunk on what it believed were the fascist, the Trump, whatever, the conservatives, because the bad guys were these faceless government thugs that told them what to think and what was correct speed. It was trying to do like a reverse 1984 where it saw itself as the underdogs, and like people that have collectivist thinking, when they see themselves as the scrappy underdogs working against the authoritarian fascists, I don't understand how they come to that conclusion, because collectivist ideas don't work unless you make everyone do them. So that's why it always ends up in murderous governments making everyone act like, I don't know. Anyway, but that one was funny because it tried to pull this Uno reverse card where they were fighting misinformation by with the power of speech, or the power of her Vox speech or whatever to fight the misinformation. And then weirdly, it turned into there was an alien invasion toward the end of it. I actually did watch the gameplay itself. Once you got past all the weird crap, there was aliens at the very end. It was very strange. But yeah, it had the characters where the guy they tried to physically represent everything, every disability possible, and the guy knits pink sweaters because he's masculine looking, but he's doing this feminine activity,
one of the women
we're very interesting and subversive. And
one of the women is fat, bisexual, and has vitiligo, the body condition as well. So all three things in the one character. Amazing. Yeah,
it was incredible. I got to go with that one because it was trying to ham fist every possible buzzword. It almost doesn't feel authentic. It almost feels like a corporate thing because they just thought, what is every single, let's just go to Tumblr, let's find every single hashtag that has been used and let's shove it all in here. Whereas Concord, I don't think Concord's woke. I think Concord is lazy, and it was just a dumb corporation that thought online live service stuff was the future. And they kind of sprinkled in some identity politics because they thought, this is what hello, fellow kids, this is what you like, right? So buy our game. And I think it wasn't real, and it wasn't as woke as Dustborn.
I think there's an onus on us to keep a kind of cultural eternal flame for this. I don't want it to be memory hold because I think it's such a fascinating artifact that in 10 or 20 years. So Platoon, you're not much of a gamer, I assume, but you'll be across these to a certain degree.
Only in the sense that I have to write for one, but I would say Dustborn. Yeah, I probably would agree with. It's weird. Concord sticks out for me more, I think, because didn't one of the people behind it say something like, we thought we had the new Star Wars on our hands?
Yeah,
they actually tricked themselves into thinking that this was going to be a massive
hubris. That's hubris. That's not like cultural identity politics.
Well, exactly, yeah, but it sticks out more for me for that reason. But I don't think it's not necessarily a woke reason. Dustborn is like the video game equivalent of Rage Against the Machine coming out in favor of government lockdowns. It's just like this is what people who've told themselves they're edgy and anti-authoritarian allow themselves to get away with because there's no one keeping them in check. It probably is in terms of content significantly more woke. And it's ironic as well because it's not even particularly unique. South Park in the Fractured Butthole had a similar mechanic in their game years ago, where if someone committed a microaggression, you got a free attack on an enemy. And it was obviously there as satire because like they're taking the piss out of that thing. And Dustborn came along and said, that's a really good mechanic and we'll take it sincerely. So we'll do the same thing. So yeah, it's got to be the woker of the two examples, but maybe the less hubristic of the two examples.
Yeah. I got high hopes for Dustborn. I think it can go deep into this bracket. Okay. All right. So Veilguard, where the character sits down at a table and declares, so I'm non-binary. That's Tash. Versus the Rings of Power superfans. So, thoughts?
Again, Veilguard is authentic. Like, it's attempting it, and it sucks, and it shows how much it sucks. And the Rings of Power thing was the producers at Amazon thought the kids are into this. We'll hire these folks, and that's what we'll do. It's Veilguard all the way. And Veilguard also shows how people view these things as their identity, and that's why there's no editing with woke. That's why woke is such poor quality oftentimes, because the director of this game is a trans woman and has said this is this character, this is his favorite. And so what person on that staff was going to go to this director and say, hey, this character whose only identity is living in both worlds, I wear different types of clothing, I'm this culture and this culture, I'm non-bot, like everything about the character was, look, I'm doing two things at the same time. Do you get the theme? Fucking constant. Who's going to go to the director, a trans woman, and say, hey, this writing sucks? No one's going to do that. So there can be no editing. There can be no quality control, because you can't say this is a bad writing because it's tied to their personality, and then it goes out the door, and then you get shitty sales, and that's the problem with it. But Veilguard wins for sure.
Just remember, it's a Gundam's video where he just opened the video with so I'm non-binary, and it just cuts to a kid screaming. I laugh every time I think about that.
There is an interesting little theme emerging though with these examples. Like the left-hand side in both of these cases has been like the writer's idea of woke, and the right-hand side has been the corporation's idea of woke. One of them has kind of substance in its content, weird substance, because it's a true believer, and the corporate one doesn't. The corporate one has this vague approximation of what it thinks the movement is about. It doesn't really understand it. It just thinks it should be doing it. And so that's why it seems so surface level by comparison. So in a way, you could argue neither one is more woke than the other, arguably, because all they're doing is taking this from very, very different angles. It's just that one of them is sincere and one of them is faddish. The corporation will always lose if you're looking for substance behind it, but it's kind of its own story to tell, how corporations were captured by this thing without ever understanding what the thing is.
Yeah. I'd probably go, I don't know, because Rings of Power, it was like an important event because it set the tone for everything that was going to come with Rings of Power. An attempt at broad-based, lowbrow, lowest common denominator, trying to get that mainstream audience to come along to watch it. Trying to get these alleged superfans who obviously hadn't really understood anything about the law whatsoever, clattering on with a bunch of nonsense. So there's a special affectionate part of, also like a faint whiff of desperation that they had done some metrics or something and found that they were lacking in a younger demographic, that things weren't panning out with their initial assessments. So they roped in together these utter dingbats and got them to talk for half an hour. So it was exquisitely botched. So it'll always have a strong place in my heart. But I think just in terms of purity of identity politics and nonsense, I think having this character who looks like that sitting down at a table to declare, so I'm non-binary, I think that's quite special. So I'd go with Tash.
Yeah, I'm definitely going for Veilguard with this, because Veilguard, It's very in-your-face, aggressive identity politics with a very clear agenda. No one was allowed to argue against it, and I don't know who said it, but there was no quality control. Especially when you look at the dialogue. I watched some of the dialogue scenes for this game, and they are so clunky. Just the most unnatural, god-awful, shoehorned-in dialogue that no one would ever say, simply for the purpose of pushing a political agenda. God-awful. Whereas I agree with Echo. I thought that this Rings of Power, hello, fellow kids from Amazon, it was hilarious. It was just the cringiest, most corporate bollocks. It was really funny watching these complete morons talking nonsense for 30 minutes about how Sauron was hot and all this nonsense. So that was really funny. And it also it also reaffirmed my decision never ever to use TikTok. I have never voluntarily watched a TikTok video. I've never downloaded the app. I never will. And that watching these people reaffirms my belief that decision was correct, because I don't know why these people aren't working at a McDonald's drive-through and doing some good for the world, which they should. That is doing good for the world, working at McDonald's. We just live in a sad timeline. These people should be working in fast food, and instead they're making money as online influencers. But yeah, I suppose I have to thank Amazon for exposing that.
Thanks, Amazon.
You also forgot the Veilguard scene that told you how you should be punished, how you should flog yourself when you misgender people. That was also really, really good.
That was good, yeah.
Okay. All right. Women talking as a post-Me Too catastrophe of self-righteousness versus the American Society of Magical Negroes. So, but I imagine I know which side you'll fall. I don't know.
It is close. It's closer than you would think. I mean, I utterly despise the American Society of Magical Negroes. I remember mentioning to Greg that the American Society of Magical Negroes, when you break it down, it is a story about a young, naive guy who is radicalized by a terrorist, basically, but by an extremist racist. He gets radicalized. That's what it's about. This may as well be a story about a young, fairly normal Muslim guy who becomes an Islamic terrorist because some jihadi, gets onto him and starts filling his head with shite. It's the same bloody thing. But at the same time, women talking, this is what happens at the end of this movie. So these women discuss, are 13 and 14-year-old boys a danger to women? Are they inherent rapists who are going to attack, their sisters and mothers and relatives? Should we bring them with us when we flee this colony? And they have this debate about this. The fact that they're even debating this is just disgusting.
And while they do that, they just cut to images of just static shots of 13-year-old boys.
And so they say, okay, well, look, the 13, 14-year-old boys, yes, they're a danger, but they are very young. So this is what we're going to do. Basically, we're going to take all the boys under 15, but if any male over 15 must stay because they're horrible rapists and we're in danger of being raped by them. So at the end, all these women leave the colony. These are mothers leaving their own 15-year-old children in the care of male rapists. That is how this movie ends, and that is supposed to be empowering. It is the most disgusting piece of feminist propaganda I have ever seen. If you think Barbie was bad, right? People listening to this, if you think Barbie was quite disgusting, okay? Barbie's a profoundly conservative movie, actually. It's one of the most conservative movies made of this decade because it's about an ancien regime old guard matriarch who loses power and then forms an anti-revolutionary group which destroys the revolution and restores the old guard regime. That's profoundly conservative. And so that exposes feminism, but women talking was just the stuff of Lucifer's fucking production company. It was horrifying.
All right. What else was I going to say about women talking? Yeah, the other annoying thing is that it's supposedly based on real events, but just based on like a tiny little substrata of actual history and then contorted and twisted to become messaged. Completely preposterous. And also, annoyingly, actually some good acting performances, which gives it a fake, kind of polish or veneer of gravitas. And the thing you forgot to mention is how it was the Abilene paradox thing of how it was talked up as like a sincere and important and profound, solemn work of art as well, when it didn't have the aesthetic merit to even get to that. So that also pissed me off.
You can make the case as well that women talking kind of is the origin of woke to begin with. That's kind of where it came from. You get a bunch of side issues, which like the race side of things, and as represented in the American Society of Magical Negroes is one of those. But Louise Perry had a really interesting article and like drawing on a lot of the research about where the modern social justice movement comes from, what personality types it really suits, what mechanisms it uses to establish and maintain its control. And almost every single one of these is quite strongly female coded. So if you want to sort of look at where particularly woke corporations came from, it does actually track the rise of women in the workplace and the rise of HR, the rise of the social sciences, all of which women tend to predominate. This isn't by any means to say that all women are guilty of spreading the woke, but it does mean that the woke is quite a feminine style of control. So if you want the most woke, going back to the core issues that woke represents and the mechanisms that it uses to establish itself, women talking is a very, very, very good exploration of those.
All right. So I think it's a consensus. Greg, any thoughts?
I'm gonna go Magical Negroes because for me it like you said or like Despot said it perfectly encapsulates the idea of victim culture, because Aaron, Justice Smith, he's not doing well, but he doesn't really blame anybody. He's just kind of a quiet, introverted, sad kind of a person who's trying to sell yarn sculptures. And then David Alan Grier sits him down in a bar and says, "Listen to me. I know why your life sucks. White people." And Justice is like, "No, I don't think that's it." He's like, "It absolutely is. It absolutely is. It's totally white people. That's why if you think that there's anything you could do to improve your life, you're totally wrong. You can't, because the white people are oppressing you." And then he buys into it, and it completely removes his own agency. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful way to present what victim culture does to people and learned helplessness. It was backward. It wasn't what they wanted, but it was amazing how it presented it, and it was so accurate. It was incredible.
Yeah, that's a compelling case. You almost twisted my arm, but I think we're going to stick with women talking. I don't know. That's a good case, Greg. I like that. Yeah, well, strong contenders. Anywho, okay, Velma becoming like empowered woman, taking an IP, shitting all over it, contorting it and twisting it, self-inserting, making it really mean-spirited, trying to hide the fact that you have nothing to say and there's a hollowness within you with snarky dialogue and attempted but botched meta on the one hand, versus Galadriel as the supreme girl boss fantasy. We're going to take this character who's full of grace and timelessness and serenity, and we're going to turn her into an action hero who saves the day, and yet she's going to come across as the most prickly, unlikable, insufferable character you've ever seen. So which one would you go with? Again, it's that same thing, Platoon, where one is like from the creator's vision, and the other one is quite corporatized. So there is a theme.
The fact they're even comparable is a damning indictment, though, isn't it? I mean, it's like, even the season performance kind of tracks in the sense that everyone talks about the first one, and then the second one disappears without trace. I mean, there's probably more woke content in Velma in the sense that it sort of, yeah, it has a shotgun approach to these things, makes jokes, I use the word advisedly, about any issue it can get its hands on. Rings of Power has a number of other narrative flaws besides its IDD politics. The Galadriel being a girl boss is probably the single most objectionable example, but for overall content, Velma probably takes the award.
I mean, Despot, we did have the late addition of a goth-like non-binary side character in Velma, so that might tip the scale.
Yeah. I was one of the very few YouTubers that even bothered to review Velma season 2, and yeah, they had this non-binary goth chick. I can't even remember if she was non-binary or gay or lesbian or what she was, but she was basically identity politics manifest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be Velma for me, because Rings of Power, as bad as it is, Velma's just, it's an evil show. It's mean-spirited. It wants to make fun of boys' genitalia, and it wants to portray everyone who is not white as being oppressed. But at the same time, Velma's just, it's just the worst. Velma might be the worst character of the woke era, like the actual character Velma, because she's simultaneously portraying herself as a victim of everyone and everything in society, but she's also a snarky bitch who gets in everyone's face and is just mean and horrible to everyone and is an awful friend. It's like she's trying to have it both ways, and she's angry that she's not liked by everyone. It's just, and it's shitting all over an IP, and it's also ripping off, what was it called, Daria, that old show.
Yeah.
And
oscillates indiscriminately between her being an ugly outcast and then somehow also attractive, depending on the moment. It's very strange.
It's the show really can't make up its mind about what particularly it wants to do. It's all derivative. Oh God, you could write a book about everything that is wrong with Velma. If 10 years from now, my son turns around to me and says, "Daddy, what was woke? Like, what was that?" Because, it'll be long dead. It's pretty much dead now, but it'll be long dead by then. It'll be a thing that is studied as a sort of cultural artifact. I would say to him, watch Velma. That is woke. That's basically woke encapsulated.
I think
that'll tell you everything you need to know to understand what woke looked like.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect distillation. All right. Greg, you offered up your thoughts?
I can't top that. I mean, that is 100%. No, it's everything. I would only repeat it because that's exactly what it was. It was.
All right. Okay, and our last pairing is musically themed. So you have the Power of Many song versus From Penis to Vagina.
That's the hardest one.
This is the hardest one, yeah. So where do you even begin with this? The Power of Many, it's a group of lesbian space witches by a lesbian auteur director who wants to impose her own ideology and thoughts into this, and it's basically an ascension ceremony for the two twins, and then it has like orchestral synth strains underneath this appalling musical piece with these poor extras and actresses who have to look like they're in like spiritual and even erotic thrall to the heavens as they sing this ditty, versus From Penis to Vagina. So go.
Yes.
Greg, you go first. I'm gonna sit back and listen to the arguments because I can't make up my mind.
Yeah, it's too hard, isn't it?
Shit. I'm gonna go. I gotta go with Amelia though, because it was connected to a larger thing that tried to present this murderous drug dealer as just living their truth and abandoning his children and his wife to just go basically be selfish. And then when that wasn't good enough, to get backpats and get praise from the public for finding the corpses that he helped create. It was just all part of that. And again, accidentally exposing the rotten mindset behind so much. Just me all the time, no matter what. And so Amelia 100% wins that.
This is one hell of a comment. It's not fair to call a neo-vagina. They staple onto a trans woman a vagina. It's not a vagina, it's a horrific abomination. That's one hell of a comment. Yeah. Oh, man. Okay. I guess I have to throw in my views, so I'm going to go... Fucking hell. Oh, this is hard. No, I can't do it. Platoon, you're going to have to go.
Well, I think the problem is they're basically the same show. What's actually the difference? Both of them portray the villains as the heroes. Both of them have auteuristic directors with no musical talent and a fundamental loathing of their own setting. Both of them portray the good guys as bad guys as good guys. They both want to try and make sociological points about like the nature of people's innate goodness and trying to upset the normal moral order of things. The music in both is terrible. The acting in both is terrible. They both abuse children. I think they're just the same. I don't think there's a difference. I'm trying to think what the only thing I can say probably is that the Acolyte kind of ruined so much of Star Wars, but that's not a woke reason. That's just a narrative reason for it to be so fucking terrible.
Well, let's see what else is actually in the Power of Many episode, because I think you have Diabetes makes an appearance.
No, that was episode 2.
Okay.
The Power of Many, I think, was episode 3.
Yeah,
I shouldn't fucking know this. It's
episode
sad.
3, and then they kind of reprise it in 7, which is the episode where the show tries to the show in episode 7 thinks it's absolutely confirmed now that the Jedi are the bad guys, and everything they did was completely correct, and if anything, they should have done it earlier. So that was a question. Are we only comparing episode to film, or is it show to film? Is it all of the Acolyte, or just this episode?
Oh,
I think, I think you just have to go song by song. So song to song, I think.
Well, in that case, Emilia Perez wins if it's just song to song.
I'm going to go with Emilia Perez too, because I think
so.
There are some ironic positives to the Acolyte. It's so badly performed and so shit, but at the same time so horrifyingly cringe in this really dated boomer way. I mean, I compared it to like a Charles Manson cult or something in my Acolyte video. That's what it made me think of. So it was kind of ironically funny, and it was this big moment online on YouTube. You know, the power of many became a kind of a slogan. And I like the power of many I hate it obviously, but I like it for the reason that it basically formed a microcosm around which you could base your opposition to sort of Kathleen Kennedy Star Wars. You know, it managed to encapsulate everything that is wrong with Kathleen Kennedy Star Wars in 4 words. It was amazing for that reason. So I'll give it to Emilia Perez for that, because I have some gratitude to the power of many.
The more I think about it, every time, more similarities. End of Emilia Perez. They walk off having turned this horrible murderer into a saint. Saint Emilia Perez is carried off in the form of a statue. End of the Acolyte. Shot from the back as they stand holding hands, having murdered an innocent man. And it's again similarly heroic. That's there as well. Strange obsession with genitalia in the Emilia Perez, but then fucking what's her name from the Acolyte comes out in all those interviews and says, well, that moment when you looked inside the lightsaber is like looking inside a penis. It's a phallic symbol. It's so similar.
Right.
They are just the same. They're the same thing.
I kind of want to make a video between the two, like the similarities. Just
Dude, somebody make a video
moral
on that.
emptiness.
Interesting topic. It is. It's amazing how many similarities they have.
Yeah, it is disgusting, isn't it? Like there's something rank about both of them. I can't quite put my finger on it. It needs an exploration. Okay, well, that's the top 8. We're not going to do the finalists because that's going to take another stream, and that's going to be an awesome bloodbath. It's going to be extraordinary. You can have Dustborn versus Veilguard. It's going to be extraordinary. Okay. Well, that was. I mean, I think I'm glad that we're archiving this so that people can, a year from now might watch this and go with a sense of incredulity and go, God, that was actually the prevailing culture. That's extraordinary.
Did you guys know they gave that game away last month?
Oh, right.
Concord? Oh, no, Concord was taken off the servers.
Veilguard, they gave away last month to PlayStation users. That's how awful that it sold, and it just nobody cared, and they were like, "Fuck it, if we give it away."
That's about $200 too expensive for me. If you paid me $200, I would consider playing it, but that's
no. It was so bloated, it's not worth the time.
Did you play it?
Well,
no. No, I don't have the time. You know what? I watch a lot of shitty television, and I played Last of Us 2 last month, and I fucking hated it. And I decided that's the last time I'm going to play a game that sucks, because it's going to sound like whining, but the YouTube job does take a lot of time, and I love it, and it's cool, but it does take a lot of time, and it doesn't leave me a lot of time for my own personal hobbies. And I'm trying not to monetize the games. Like, I'm trying to keep that to myself and very separate.
Exactly,
and I only talk about the things that I love, and it's just passion shit. And I don't want to let that get taken over by playing shitty stuff. I watch enough shitty stuff and talk about it. I don't want to take the small hobby time that I have and play any more shitty stuff to talk about. So no, I won't be playing that. I don't want to waste my time with it. I was going to play the Star Wars Outlaws game. I decided against that too. I'm not going to do it. I'm only going to play things that I enjoy. And then if they're great, I'll talk about them. But if not, that's fine too. I don't need to monetize it. That's okay. It'll remain my hobby.
It's a practical consideration, because you can get through a shit movie in 2 hours. It takes you 20 hours to play a bad game, if not more. So yeah, fucked up.
Yeah, and that was like 70. Veilguard was about 60, 70, 80, depending on how hard you power through it and stuff. It was a long game.
Yeah.
Well, since we last spoke, I'd only seen the first 2 episodes when we had our last stream, and so now I've caught up and seen all 4. And fuck, that 3rd episode was one of the greatest episodes of television I've ever seen. A total masterclass, aesthetically, composition, the preternatural talent of this kid to do that role. I don't know where they found this actress, but she was also perfect. it was almost like a stage play, just reduced to the elements. The camera was unintrusive, but also brilliant in its movement, smooth, extraordinary motions. After finishing the episode, I had like still this visceral sense of tension in the body, which took a long time to sort of divest myself of, because I'd seen something aesthetically brilliant, which is so rare these days that it does give you like an almost physical sensation, and B, it was so compelling and realistic that it took a long time to sort of, to get that out of the system. So I thought the fourth episode was almost extraneous, like they didn't even necessarily need that fourth episode. It was compositionally well done. It didn't advance the story particularly. It had maybe some moments here or there that were useful, but I don't think it advanced the story especially. I think it could have been almost like a 3-act thing where it could have just finished with this, because it was so profound and so brilliant. So I'll give you my thoughts, and it sort of expands out in concentric rings, because as I said to Platoon, I think we said on X, this is the first example I can think of message-driven, I hate to use the term woke, but for lack of a better term, message-driven contentious content that's also aesthetically brilliant. And I don't think we've really had that combination in one thing before, which creates a really interesting dissonance. So I'll give you my thoughts, and they're kind of like in concentric rings. One, watching the thing, aesthetically, this is a fine work of art. The BBC often gets things wrong and is frustrating for more reasons we've got time to explain. But when they get it right, God, do they get it right. And this was just, or Netflix, sorry, not BBC. So I should just say the Brits, when they get it right, God, do they get it right with television. And this is such a good example of that. So that's the first ring. And then there's a ring outside of that of, as we talked about this, but last time, which you explained, that there's 2 really good ideas in here: the online culture and its malaise and sickness, and knife crime. And they tried to meld them together in a way that wasn't quite coherent, kind of incongruous, trying to mesh those 2 ideas together, which then creates this third concentric ring of, it creates this nastiness culturally and politically around the idea of white boys and masculinity, which then led to literally in PMQs, a Labour MP asking the Prime Minister a question, and he's saying that, he's watching at home with his family. And then that also leads to the idea they're going to have like them come in, the actors, to give their views on it, which seems extraneous to me because everything you needed to say is already inherent in the artistic product anyway. And then the idea that they're going to have it, played in schools or whatever. And as a critical drinker said, for so many boys, that's just going to instinctively get their backs up, that they're being lectured, that the teachers are putting on stuff that's going to not gel with them. It's going to be grating. So I think it's going to have that negative effect. And so from these concentric circles out, I don't quite know how to balance them. And then I get to the furthest concentric circle, which is, at the very least, Platoon, you said that it's kind of like a satanic panic for liberal middle-class parents. But also there's also an after effect of that at the very least, in just the most broad-based, furthest concentric ring, that parents just might get more vigilant about their sons being online, which on balance is a good thing. So those are the concentric rings I went outward. And I couldn't find a particular theme to settle on, or a particular one of those, which is more important to me. So over to you guys.
Go ahead, Platoon.
Oh, yeah, okay. Designated adolescence disliker that I am. No, it's there's a very annoying sort of dynamic that comes about when you talk about this show. If you talk about the fact that it is, by the proper definition of the word, a work of propaganda, some people will say, you're ignoring how technically and artistically brilliant it is. Why aren't you talking about the story? I agree with everything positive that's been said about the way it's written, the way it's shot, the way it's produced, the way it's acted. I think it's a brilliant work of art. But then if you don't talk about the fact that it's been used as a work of political propaganda, another set of people will say, why are you ignoring the fact that this is being used to effectively bully white boys and transfer all of the sins of various other communities to the one group in society on whom it is safe and legally allowed to shit? I think it's possible to have both of these things. We've sort of got sucked into this idea that propaganda is just bad art with overt messaging. It's the kind of Hollywood style propaganda that everybody's used to, when like a Marvel character stands up and lectures you about racism, or we've had plenty of examples in the earlier segment of, these very, very bad message movies. But the best propaganda is also some of the best art there is. That's kind of what makes propaganda useful. Propaganda has to be artistically worthy if it's to be convincing. And the fact that this has been so convincing proves that rule. I think it's an incredibly regrettable thing that something which is so well done has been used, and in fact created to be used, as a tool to bully white boys in a way that allows us to not talk about the real issues that society faces. What is being created in this show is a work of complete fantasy, but that work of complete fantasy is very appealing to people who are maybe a bit squeamish at looking at real crime demographics, real crime data, the actual problems that society does in fact face. So white boys are once again being made the scapegoats of a very, very cowardly middle class in the United Kingdom, and probably abroad as well, since this has an international appeal. It's worth saying that this hasn't just come about because a Labour MP decided to make it a work of propaganda. This was created as one. This was partially government funded. A large part of the funding for adolescents comes through the UK government's Strategic Priorities Fund, I think it's called, which has a bunch of remits to talk about environmental concerns, industrial productivity, growth. And one of those is to improve adolescent mental health. And they gave Netflix quite a large amount of money to produce this show. And then you start getting into that weird little nexus where the UK government is funding a foreign private company to hire British directors and writers to create a story that then the British parliamentarians can use to push social agendas that they've had on their minds for ages. Again, this meets every definition of the word propaganda. I think it's a real shame that it can't be left as a work of exquisite fantasy, because that's what it is. But since it is now becoming government policy, you kind of have to talk about it for those effects as well. Then we start getting into the question of, is it in any way accurate to life? Because it has to be to change government policy. And the answer to that question is no. The kid, as we're shown from the background he has, with the range of influences that are enacted upon him, is not going to grow up to become a stabber unless he has a huge number of other comorbidities which the show doesn't even want to touch on. The fact that it thinks watching an Andrew Tate video will turn a young kid from a lower to middle class stable family background into a misogynistic murderer is a work of moral panic designed to get particularly middle class mothers scared about what their sons are doing online. That's a very harmful thing to do. I don't agree with that as the proper use of an artwork. So, I mean, I could go on, but I'll just rant forever about it. If anyone wants to stop me, please do.
Well, it's interesting. I just very quickly, it's kind of like the converse, I suppose. Maybe this doesn't quite hold up, but the idea of libertine artists, who you can separate the art and the artist, the artist and the art from. They might have terrible, debauched lives, but they create beautiful musical culture. And this is kind of on the other side. It's like the first example I've seen of it, of like prissy, lecturing propagandist. To what extent can you separate that from appreciating just the art? So it's I've never seen that dynamic before.
Well, the answer should be easy. It's just that the creators don't let you. The creators have said that they are inspired by real events, and then you look at the real events they cite, and they don't actually match either each other or the show. And then they go to the government, as well as the government going to them, and they say, we want change to come from the story that we've shown here, in which case that they are actually preventing you, the creators of the show, from treating their work of art as a work for art's sake. They are telling you that they have created a work to shape government policy. That's what it is, which again meets the strict definition of propaganda.
And just to emphasize the point that Platoon just made, they said the following. I mean, I mentioned this in the last stream. So this is from the Wikipedia page of Adolescence. Speaking on BBC Radio 4's arts program, Front Row, Thorne stated that the two writers wanted to, quote, look in the eye of modern male rage and examine the influence of public figures such as Andrew Tate on boys. So even if you want to take this as a great work of art that's not propagandistic, no, you can't. The creators have stated this is propaganda. This is about male rage and, Andrew Tate having a Ferrari making boys want to stab girls, which, of course, is nonsense. But that's very frustrating because I would love to simply take this as a great work of art, but I can't. It's clearly a great work of propaganda. What really interested me about the whole Adolescence cultural blow up was the frustration I felt from a lot of British people that they can't talk about the cultural issues and the problems the country has that they clearly want to talk about. There's this frustration, you know, why can't we have a show about Islamic terrorism or about, you know, the problem of knife violence, knife crime in Black communities, a lot of which is caused by fatherlessness, because the fatherlessness rate in among Black Brits is huge, far higher than among whites, same as in America. But I want to read this because this is a little postcard image of the modern UK and the kind of things that I think it would be helpful to have a show about, because it would be obviously culturally important, but also I think cathartic for people to see their problems honestly depicted, not depicted in this vaguely treacherous, lying way by Netflix. So this is from a Netflix account called Morgoth's Review. Quote, "Their outlook for the country was nothing short of apocalyptic. They spoke of hundreds of homeless Brits on the streets, while floods of illegal migrants are housed in hotels on the taxpayer. A carer spoke of children hobbled with mental health problems, the long hangover of a COVID pandemic still biting. The stay-at-home mum talked of criminals and junkies living above her, with politicians and local police powerless to stop them. Not one of the Labour voters could name an achievement by the party they voted for. The most recalled action was Labour's cutting of the winter fuel allowance, described as punishing Brits to siphon more money to immigration. The non-voting groups spurned the election deliberately, feeling there was no option that represented them. The mainstream party's alien values had pushed them away. Quote, there's no democracy in the UK anymore." And that was from a Channel 4 pollster who went to Grimsby. That is just a little fraction of what it looks like in the UK right now, and the kind of things people do want to talk about, and the problems that they have. So when you have Netflix doing this, I think it's very frustrating for a lot of British people, because this has fuck all to do with the many, many problems that are destroying the country. And there's a great deal of frustration obviously coming out as a result of that.
And it is especially irritating as well, because when you do meet people who like the show, and they do agree that there is some problem that has to be solved, very rarely can they either define the problem they think the show is trying to solve. Very rarely can they actually cite what the show cites as causing that problem. And so very rarely can they really tell you what the show is actually about. And this is that you see this in like the comments. Every time I've spoken about this show, like a cursory look at the comment section will reveal a number of people who say, because I've said a couple of times, like, if there is a phenomenon of young white boys growing up with smartphones, watching Andrew Tate who go on to stab women, this is surely a known thing, and there will be a list, and this list will be readily available to people. Like there will be data to support the thing the show says. There isn't any such list, because it's not happening. There is a phenomenon of an increase in knife crime, but young white boys from middle-class families are not usually involved in that for fairly obvious reasons, because they're not likely to be involved in gangs, which are the primary driver of knife crime and all the rest of that stuff. But there will still be people who say, well, what do you mean there isn't a problem? Are you saying that there's no such thing as misogyny? It's like, well, no, but the show isn't just talking about misogyny. The show is much more specific than that. Are you saying that men are never violent toward women? Again, no, but you will never get rid of that, because that's biology as much as it is sociology. And again, there is actually no evidence that there's been a significant uptick in the rates of what they fancifully call femicide, for example, that warrants this kind of panicky response. So people people have this vague sense that something is wrong. The show says that something is wrong, and they assume that because the show says that something is wrong, it has the same thing in mind. But it doesn't, because they actually don't know what they have in mind when they talk about it. Fantastic ingredients for a moral panic, when people are vaguely aware of something they're unhappy about, can't specifically name it, are told this is the cause, and so they say, well, this must be it then. And then you delve into the reasons for it, and it's roughly as illogical and irrational as the claim that heavy metal music was making people into Satan worshippers. It's just the same thing again and again and again, and it happens periodically. And it would just be nice if people actually looked at problems that they believe exist, and since they think it's a serious issue, took the time to read about it, but nobody bothers to fucking do it. It's very annoying.
To what extent can we, giving the benefit of the doubt here, allow for the fact that you will have vast swaths of people who are generally or vaguely familiar with this, who can integrate two things, that they've watched the show, but they're also in a very abstract, generalized way aware themselves that knife crime and the murder and that kind of misogyny is largely from non-white people. I think people are generally at some latent or half-conscious level already aware of them. So can we, to an extent, allow for that integration, which is kind of an end run around what the producers of the show might have intended?
That's a very interesting Orwellian aspect of modern Britain. It's not just, am I allowed to say this? It's, am I allowed to think this? Is it permissible for me to think, yeah, there is knife crime in Britain and it's coming from Islamic terrorism and black kids? Is that a permissible thought, or is that verboten? And a lot of, especially sort of cosmopolitan liberal types, people who grew up in that atmosphere, are probably just, they're terrified to even think that. Even though they know at heart that it's true, they must block that thought out.
But Platoon, you'd agree that if you just talk generally to people and ask them about knife crime, at some sort of half-conscious level, they'd be aware that it's largely black related, so they can integrate that into their evaluation of the show.
I'm not convinced. Never underestimate people's ability to make very comfortable myths out of things they'd rather not look too closely about. I mean, it's not dissimilar to the way in which, for example, when you do see an explosion of knife crime, or when there are terrorist attacks or anything like that, it's not dissimilar to the way people say, well, you know, this violence comes from oppression, right? These people are socially disadvantaged, or they're mean to us because we were mean to them. And it's like, okay, how does that explain the fact that homeless people, for example, who live on the streets and sleep on park benches, are not known to scream Allahu Akbar and start blowing themselves up? Like, if oppression is the thing that causes violence always, and it's just in that general a sense, you can't really explain the particulars where those things don't work, because obviously the homeless people are particularly disadvantaged, and yet not disproportionately represented in knife crime statistics or explosion statistics in the way that certain other groups happen to be. But these are very comfortable for us to say, because we all like trying to be kind to people, and it's a very worthy trait in humanity. Everybody would rather that integration works than not work. Everybody likes the idea that if we're nice to everyone, they'll be nice to us. And it's a good trait of humanity, but it is also sometimes taken to such degrees that it becomes almost masochistic kindness and very self-destructive kindness, because effectively people who have done nothing wrong get blamed, and the real cause of the problem goes unaddressed. And it gets worse, in fact, because we've been ignoring it for so long. And the people who are being blamed instead are kids like this. When the Prime Minister describes this as a documentary repeatedly, I don't think that's going to do much good for the adolescent mental health of young white boys, but we don't seem to care about that very much.
Okay, well, a few extra thoughts. Greg, I'll just jump in. One with, I found that in the last episode, the idea where the father is talking about his father was maybe a bit violent with him or aggressive, that felt kind of tacked on, not particularly naturalistic, and it didn't seem to have much of a point. And I couldn't figure out why the use of the word nonce. Am I correct, Platoon, in saying that that's like a very old-fashioned Brit term for gay or queer? I didn't quite know.
Sort of.
What are they doing with that?
If anything, you'll kind of hear it now used in reference to kitty diddlers. It's like it's a very, very, it's quite antiquated, but you still hear it. But it's sort of lost its association strictly with gays and become more of like a you probably fiddle with kids kind of thing. But it's
right, because what were they going for? Were they suggesting that there was some kind of sexual dysfunction or repression there that might be underneath this rage? That's what I thought maybe they were going for. I couldn't quite square it.
That's certainly one of the, I mean, what it's vaguely aiming at is the idea that there are social and social sexual expectations of young boys which are being propagated by the internet, for example. There is an ideal of male sexual prowess which is being undermined when you get bullied, for example, by girls. So the like one of Jamie's major problems is the fact that he has this lack of self-esteem, and he's bullied for all of these things that the internet tells him he should have, but he feels he doesn't have. I think this is again quite a common set of myths, given that for his age, he's unlikely even to be the subject of intersexual bullying. It very rarely happens to kids under 13. Yeah. It's principally boys bully boys and girls bully boys until you hit about the age of 18. But so that comes into it. But if you read the interviews with the show's creators, I mean, they go out of their way to try and say they didn't want to give the impression too strongly that there was anything particularly wrong with the family, because that would have undermined the point they were trying to make. They said quite explicitly when doing a sit-down interview with Netflix about the show, we didn't want to say that like his mother was an alcoholic. We didn't really want to stress like his dad was violent or abusive or anything like that, because that isn't the point. And it feeds into the moral panic aspect of the thing. What they're trying to say to completely stable middle-class families where the only thing that's wrong is you don't know what your son's watching on the internet, that all the worst things in the world could also happen to you. Like classic trick to drum up paranoia. So they made the show less believable in order to paradoxically make it more plausible. And
were they trying to get, was there perhaps a little touch there? They wanted to do something social constructivist, to say that maybe the dad's masculinity was shaped artificially by his inherited thing or behavior from his dad. But then they botched that up because that doesn't quite connect to Jamie and his thing. They wanted to do something socially constructivist. That's kind of the vibe I got.
I think up to a point, that's definitely, true up to a point. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, the dad's character, for example, because he's not particularly dysfunctional, he's just not always present. You know, he works hard, he doesn't spend as much time, he's not outgoing when he doesn't effusive in his professions of love for his child, but the child still, makes these very performative gestures to try and live up to his father or to get the attention and the notice of his father when he, demands that the psychologist say, tell my dad I'm okay. Like the father figure is central in his mind, which I think is the show's vaguely social constructionist idea that there's a degree of blame on the father to a point for not being aware of the way in which masculinity has changed over time. Like if only he had known where things had gone, he would have been more effusive, more caring, more outgoing, and wildly in love with his kid. But
it didn't quite work though, because he's just a conventional dad for the most part. So
yes.
I don't know.
But then most people who watch this show come from very conventional families where nothing in particular is wrong. So you have to convince them that something could be wrong. Otherwise, who's going to watch the show?
Okay, Greg.
What I think is odd about this one is that it plays into the manosphere. Like they don't understand the complaints of the manosphere, and so this plays into it. Like I complain about the manosphere all the time because I fucking hate it. Andrew Tate can just get, God, I fucking hate that guy. Fresh and Fit, the whatever podcast, all these fucking pieces of shit. But the thing is, whenever I mention it, people say, "But you don't understand, Greg. The world is against men. That's why these guys are popular." Like, and I know why they're popular. That doesn't change the fact that they're completely full of shit and basically tell young guys, hedonism is the way, fellas. Like that is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard as a solution. Like escape the matrix, buy shit, be a consumer. Oh my God. Like what are you talking about? It's the most matrix shit I've ever heard. But the thing is, the people that made this show, if that's their, and I didn't realize that until Despot said it last time, that was like their quote, because I was taking fatherhood stuff from it. Like, look, this guy is working too much and he thinks he's, doing the right thing. He's trying to provide, but in the process accidentally disconnected from his son. And then his son didn't have a good masculine role model. And so, basically had other boys, which fucking Lord of the Flies shit in public school and then online. So I took that from the show of like, hey, just pay attention to your kids. And then it doesn't matter what they're watching if you are a good role model and you have a good communication and they have a solid foundation, they feel loved and all that. But the thing the show doesn't seem to get is that it is giving ammo to the fresh and fits and the better bachelors and the rational males of the world, because they can point to the show and say, see, they admitted that they're trying to blame men for all the problems in the world. See, fellas, they don't care about you. That's why you have to listen to us. And the disconnect, though, is that the reason they can't fight the whole manosphere thing, because my big issue with the manosphere is it's never about character. It's about external shit. Like get your status up for other dudes, get nice cars to get the hoes, get more money, up your game, hustle harder. It's never like be a better person, have integrity, fucking learn some shit, right? Increase your critical thinking skills, read some philosophy or some really good literature. Like that's never ever spoken about. It's all external. And the reason that the people that make this kind of shit, this kind of feminist woke, will take government money, the reason they can't understand why they can't argue against that side of it is because they're just as externally driven. It's all about physical external representation. We aren't in enough spaces. We're not being seen enough, whatever. So they're having the exact same problem. That's why they have to attack the whole masculine rage aspect of it. But in doing so, all they're doing is fueling guys to just go to that side of the internet even harder, because they're just saying, fellas, you're the problem. It's very much like we're talking about with the women talking. Fellas, you're inherently the problem. There's nothing, even at 13, you are a murderous psychopath. That's what this show is telling you. And they're going to show it in schools and tell them you guys are inherently dangerous. And all that's going to do is make them think, wow, the people that say they understand me, the Andrew Tates of the world that say they understand me and my masculine urges, you know, I'm going to go listen to them even harder because of shit like this that tells me that I'm such a dangerous piece of shit. And they can't get that that's why guys are listening to them in the first place. It's not because their fathers aren't present. It's not really, you know, society's fault, whatever. It's they don't feel that they're understood. And these guys say, we get you. We know how you feel. We know that you have masculine things you want to do and the world won't let you be a man, but we're going to let you be a man. We get you. And it's just going to push them fucking harder. It's ridiculous.
It is. It's the essential irony. It will drive more people toward it. Like you're absolutely right. I mean, if one of the appeals of people like Andrew Tate is they say that the world is against you, all the statistics show the world is against you. Young white boys have the lowest employment prospects, the highest unemployment prospects, some of the highest suicide rates in the country. Everyone is blaming you not for what you do, but for what you are. Your sex and your race are the cause of most of the bad results the world has seen. And here comes this show, which is now going to be shown in schools, which says, yes, by virtue of being a young white boy, you are vulnerable to malign influences, which will prove us right. And what do you expect young boys to do if not to rebel against this kind of overly nanny-ish behavior and go to anyone who tells them it's a bad thing? It's just, there's a fundamental difference in the way that men and women socialize. This is what young boys do not benefit from over-parenting in the way that some young girls do. Young boys need more time and more space to be a bit rebellious. They need to go outside more. They need to hit sticks. They need to fight each other. They need to do all of this shit because that's kind of how they do. They form smaller but tighter-knit social friendship groups. They don't like being asked by their mother every time they come back from school, so what did you do today? Because the answer to them is usually nothing. And then the mother says, oh, no, you must have done something. Tell me every detail of your life. It's suffocating. And boys don't like that kind of thing because that's just not what they're designed to like. So leave them alone a bit. Of course, be a bit careful about when you give them smartphones. Be a bit careful about the kinds of friends they make. But if you don't want them to go and listen to the absolute cancer of the internet that is Andrew Tate, then stop proving him right about everything. It's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
I think there's an aspect where the term toxic masculinity started off meaning there's an inherent masculinity which, if taken in a certain direction, can be maligned and distorted and thus become toxic. But now it's come to mean toxic masculinity has come to mean that there is no inherent masculinity. So if you try to create an identity of masculinity, that is inherently a toxic thing to do, because it's made on something artificial, which you then have to sustain. So boys can't articulate that to themselves, but they're getting those mixed messages, and with so much dissonance, they're kind of just like throwing up their hands and going, I don't really care either way. That's my view.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting about this episode that you have on screen is that they accidentally hit upon such an issue. Like it's funny that they can try to, I don't remember the term you guys use. They can try to change it up, you know, social engineering or whatever, but there's still some of it that is just accidentally correct. And because you can only get so far away from reality before it's not good propaganda because it's so outlandish. But there are a couple of this episode 3 is masterful because it really does show that the kid gets agitated when he's asked too many questions because he thinks that he's being maneuvered or something. He thinks there's ulterior motive going on because he just wants it to be straightforward. And he references the other therapist. This guy asked me straightforward questions. I knew what we were talking about. I answered the questions. That was it. And that's what made him comfortable. And so the show does understand on a certain level, like what this boy wants to do, and that he's agitated by being forced to communicate in a way that he doesn't want to. But then the show says, well, he should have, right? And so that's where they fuck up, is they're like, see, what a piece of shit. He doesn't speak the way that, you know, that a girl might, or he doesn't speak the way that the therapist wants him to. And then they accidentally, again, hit upon the real problem at the very end of the episode when he starts freaking out. And then suddenly he has this panic, like he just wants to be externally validated, and not validated in like a real way, but just, do you like me? He keeps screaming, do you like me? Do you think that I'm like, do you think I'm cool? And that again accidentally hits upon the problem of why these kids are even watching fucking Sneeko, the piece of shit, because to them that's what's important, and they haven't been it's a character issue where they think being cool, being liked, having high status, whatever, like that is the most important thing. And so they're not being radicalized by this content. They're watching the content because it affirms to them that is the most important thing, to be cool, to say cool shit, to have other guys think you're cool because you drive a nice car, whatever. And so there are little tiny bits of the show that come through that are so accurate, but they are accidental and they're smothered by then the showrunner's attempt to frame it all as being very, very bad, instead of just looking at it in a neutral way and saying, here are some societal issues. Here's what boys are seeing or what they're dealing with, and here's how they're reacting. And yeah, it becomes a propaganda piece, but they still can't completely cover up the reality of it.
Just the line in that third episode towards the end of it, where she just leans in and she just has to make the point. You understand that Katie is dead and she's not coming back. That is forever. Just taking it down to that level, just the pathos of that was so intense. Man, amazing stuff.
Yeah, it was. And that kid, I mean, he went from one range of emotion to the back and back and forth, all in one take.
Yeah.
And amazing. Sold, going from, it was very I never did finish Crime and Punishment, and I'm finishing it right now, and it's like that, where Raskolnikov is at one moment calm and I want to help people, and then the next moment screaming and trying to beat people, and then the next moment again I want to save somebody's life, I want to get but then again rethinking it and is crazy. And this kid captured all of that in one shot. I don't know how old he is. What is he, like 17 or something in real life, or is he even that old?
15, I think.
I mean, that was wild that he was able to be reserved and quiet. Like, I'm on to you. I know what's going on. I'm going to be, but then try to be intimidating in a very immature, childish kind of way. Like, I'm going to stand over you. I'm going to say cool shit. But then he realizes that's not working. So he pulls back and then he eats the sandwich and he's kind of docile for a minute. Fucking amazing. With no cuts. Holy shit.
Yeah. Oh man. There's a very special time in any reader's life where you read that passage in Crime and Punishment of Mikolka's horse, where he has that memory of being a child, and the peasant just wants the mare, the sorrel mare, to take the cart full of peasants forward, and it's too weak to do so. So he keeps flailing at it and hitting at it. That's one of the most visceral and powerful things in literature, where you just you reel from the book after you've read it. Like,
and
wow,
the crowd gets into it. What continues to stand out to me about this one, and like I said, I think I'm halfway through it at the moment. What stands out to me is this constant, this reoccurring idea that people like to be in misery. There's this continual thing where they're angry, like Raskolnikov is upset and he derives this kind of joy from it. Or Medvedev, or what's the drunk guy? I can't remember his name, but he has this speech about how he feels terrible, and so he's drinking to feel terrible stronger, because then he really feels.
Well, that's just Russian. That's just Russian,
right?
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Make a new film of that. That's what we need.
That'd be a very difficult movie to make, because so much of it is happening in Raskolnikov's head and how he reacts to things and how he thinks about things. And of course, fundamentally, the theme of the book is, can you form your own sort of parallel moral code to society's idea of morals and live by that? Can you escape this idea of universal morals, which is, Raskolnikov, his discussions with his student friend about how, he's not beholden to universal morals. He's above that. That's for the lower sorts, people who don't have his intellect and his education. Very Oscar Wilde, and of course that doesn't work.
Well, Greg, I'm halfway through The Brothers Karamazov, so with all its religious stuff, that'd be an interesting discussion in itself.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, you guys want to quickly touch on this, I guess?
Oh God, it's just gonna be terrible. There's the
problem. Go ahead, Greg. Yeah.
No, you go for it.
Well, I mean, I've not played the game, but there's a 4-hour The Last of Us 2, the movie, on YouTube. It's made up of all the cutscenes from the game. And I've watched the first hour and a half, and I'm shocked at just how bad it is and how little potential there is in terms of the source material. The story is fundamentally broken. I'm not going to give anything away. We're not going to do spoilers in case because there are major spoilers. And I know a lot of the people that are intending to watch the show haven't played the game. but it's just wrong. It's a very simple quest plot, and it has a very simple inciting incident which incites this quest. But it's so boring. The characters are awful. They will put you to sleep. I was trying to watch this in bed last night, and I literally fell asleep. I couldn't do it anymore. It's so fucking boring. And apart from anything else, the story has nothing to do with the zombies. Like, it's not like you don't get some great cathartic answer about the zombies or the outbreak. No, it's just a story that is happening in parallel to the existence of zombies. They're completely separate, and it's so trite and boring and cliched. The characters, I know I've mentioned it, but my God, the characters are such a huge problem. They're awful. They're unlikable, but they're also really boring. That's what I got just from an hour and a half. If someone presented that to me and said, okay, turn this into a movie, I would say, guys, there is nothing here. This is completely unsalvageable. There's no one can turn this into a compelling piece of content. This is trash. So that's what I got just from watching an hour and a half of those clips. But Greg, I know you've played the entire game.
Yeah, it was awful. The gameplay was good. I really do like the gameplay, and it's a good looking game. So if you play it and you're exploring the world and everything, that's fun. And then the story is a whole separate thing, and it's garbage. And you're absolutely right that there's no way to salvage this because there are contradictory themes. Because the game simultaneously wants to tell you everybody has their own kind of story, and just because you were the protagonist in the last game doesn't mean that the protagonist is the good guy. And the creator of that, Neil Druckmann, had a whole different interpretation of the end of that first game than the rest of us did. And so to me, the second game felt like Joker 2. Like he basically thought, oh, you guys didn't read it correctly, and now I'm really going to shove it in your face that Arthur is not the good guy. Fuck you. That's what it felt like. And a lot of people, you're going to see a couple of things. One, you're going to see people say, well, the structure was off, and they'll rearrange the structure. And they are rearranging the structure in the show to introduce another character early to try to make you feel for this character, because the game relied on shock tactics. There's an inciting incident that's the shock tactic that a lot of folks know about, but not every show watcher knows. And then later there's the shock tactic of making you feel bad about your actions that the game made you take and try to subvert you in that way. And, oh, this person you thought was a monster is actually really nice. And there's so much emotional manipulation that happens, but it only works because that character was set up as a monster. So rearranging the story takes that shock factor, that subversion away. And then it's even more boring than it is in the game, because now it's just random people and nobody's right, nobody's wrong. It's moral relativism at its absolute worst. And then there is a third group, and I don't know if, Despot, you've encountered this in the game movie because it comes in later in the game, but there's a third group that contradicts the theme because they are just patently evil. They're horrible in every way. They don't even get a character that you get to know. They're just terrible. They're there as, for gameplay purposes, they're there as bullet sponges, which erases the narrative of, like, be careful what you do. There are consequences. You killed somebody in the first game that, it turned out to be but then you just shoot these people indiscriminately. There's no problem. So it totally contradicts itself there. You're going to see a lot of people that are going to try to give you this. It's not, everything's not meant to be happy ending. This game and this story forces you to confront horrible thing. It's very deep and bleak, and that's what makes it so intellectual. It's fucking not. It's not. It's boring.
That is so emo.
It's so boring. There's a clip of Troy Baker, who voices Joel in the game, in an interview, and he's talking about how this game was so powerful and how this game really asks you to meet it on its level, not what you want it to be, but really forces you to reckon with it as it is, and asks you to consider this. He's such a fucking pretentious piece of shit, but it's just boring. The message is revenge is bad. The cycle of violence, revenge bad things are bad. The world is bleak. Humanity is terrible. And people try to pretend that is somehow deep and artistic, and it's not. It's just boring. And you're absolutely right. There was that, you brought up something that I didn't realize. The zombies actually sort of played into the theme of the first game, sort of the downfall of humanity. And they reflected the downfall of humanity. In this one, they're just kind of window dressing. They're just there because they were there in the first game. You're right. They don't factor in narratively and thematically like they did in the first story. They're just sort of there because, well, we can't pretend they don't exist anymore.
They want answers about the zombies. It's like, well, what is this? Are the zombies a kind of hive mind controlled by, some sort of plant species that seeks to take over humanity? Is it a defense mechanism? Is it a kind of defense mechanism created by the Earth to rid itself of humanity, which it has identified as a kind of parasite? What is going on here? To what extent are the zombies sentient? To what extent is this reversible? These are interesting questions, and the game has absolutely no interest in even examining them.
No, it is what he thinks is a deep artistic idea. It's ideas that he wanted. So if you can track him trying to get these ideas into the games when he was not in charge, and then the man that talks about how women need to be represented more forced one of the original writers and directors, Amy Hennig, out of the company to take over entirely. And once Amy and then another director, Bruce Straley, once they were gone, they were kind of the editing balancing forces. Once they were gone, he was fully in charge. And he's talked about, I want to do a revenge plot before, but it was shot down. He wanted to have these feminist themes, but they were shot down. And they're all in here. He thinks the subversion of the hero, he thinks the Luke Skywalker blue titty milk is so damn cool and artistic. It's not, but he still thinks it's cool, so he did it here. It's just a boring story with boring themes, and it doesn't matter how they orient it. And they also have to rely more on the main character of Ellie, played by Bella Ramsey, who is that's charisma fucking black hole.
They've got her, like I said, we don't want to spoil anything, but she's going to spend a lot of time with another character, and they're really boring characters, but also they're basically the same person. And if you want an idea of what a story looks like when you have the two main characters are basically the same person, watch Indiana Jones 5. That's one of the reasons it's so bad, is because there's no chemistry between Harrison Ford and Phoebe Waller-Bridge, because they're both Indiana Jones. One is just a female, morally inverted version of Indiana Jones, so that they don't play well off each other. And the two main characters in this thing are going to be Ellie and another character, and it's just
Dina.
Fucking awful.
Right,
they're terrible on screen together.
So the issue with Dina, and I don't get to spoiler, she shows up pretty much immediately. She has no character.
She's Ellie. She's basically another version of Ellie. That's what I got from it.
Well, she's there to just mirror her own thought. I mean, really, they didn't want Ellie just stating her motivations to the air, so they needed another character to talk to. But Dina has no motivation of her own. She has no thoughts of her own. She's not a real character. She's simply there so that there can be dialogue and not monologue. That is the only thing she does.
Yeah. Well, I'm not looking forward to this. I'm extremely pessimistic. This would need... I can't even say this would need to be rewritten. They would just need to do their own thing. And I don't think they will, because I think there's a lot of stuff that they will like. They'll like the postmodernism. They'll like the nihilism. They like the lesbian sex and all the gay stuff. They'll like all that, so they'll want it in there. So I don't think they're going to stray very far from the source material.
I think the show is going to be extremely brutal, and people will think that that's cool too. That... it's meant to make you uncomfortable. That's the point. And if you can't deal with it, you don't understand art. It's going to be it's going to be visually very brutal and gross. Thematically, it's going to be very brutal. It's going to be, in my video, I talked. It's like Babel. It's like Babel. It's like Crash. It's like, or not Crash. God damn it, what's the other one? I was getting confused. Anyway, it's like a lot of these movies that are just terrible and horrible and depressing, and people think that they're deep, and they're not.
Anyway, what streaming service can people catch this on, Greg?
You know what? I read on Twitter that this is going to be on HBO Max, so that's where this is going to be.
Well, with that recurring moment of liberty. Go ahead.
There's going to be quite a bit of bloat in this as well, isn't there? Because they're not planning on stopping after season 2, are they? I thought I read that they had discussed maybe even up to 4 seasons.
Yes.
In which case, they're going to have to string the story out quite a bit. And I thought season 1 was okay. There were some bits of it I really liked. I think I'm sympathetic to the argument that the best episode is like, I don't think it's disconnected from the story, but I am sympathetic to the idea that it kind of throws the pacing off a little bit. I would imagine we'll see more of that kind of thing if they're going to try and string this story out across multiple seasons. Probably try to save one of the big dramatic things that happens at the beginning of the game for later, so people don't get pissed off immediately and switch off. I can see that happening. Keep Pedro Pascal around for a little bit longer.
That'll be a cliffhanger at the end of the season for sure.
Well, I was going to do a whole thing on the tariffs, but even Platoon's sublimely ratiocinating mind at 2:30 in the morning GMT might not be able to string it together. So I think we'll probably just end it there. I just need to go through some super chats. If you're all,
I can sum it up in one word if you like. There's one sentence even, which is like similar to the adolescence thing. If you think something is important, please take the time to read about it and follow the arguments that are being made, because you'll notice that all of the arguments being made contradict each other every other day. So even if you think there's a good case for them, decide what that case is before you start arguing for them, and don't trust anyone online who starts throwing random stats out that contradict the last batshit insane thing they said, because my God, the last week's been painful. But anyway, sorry.
No, I think it's a scene, is it in Beetlejuice, where Beetlejuice opens up like a little hole or portal or porthole thing into a dimension of chaos just for like 2 seconds, and then screaming and color and chaos, and he just shuts it close again. So that's with me in the news in the world, I think, at the moment. So I don't know what the fuck is going on. Anyway, Drake Timbershaft. In college, friends told me to watch 2001: A Space Odyssey on shrooms. I rejected the idea, but I think I'll take the shrooms challenge. Minecraft movie. But yeah, it's gonna be nice. It's gonna be friendly and lightweight. You'll probably have a good time.
Yeah.
M8566 gifted 10 Echo Chamberlain memberships. Well, that's very generous of you. I'm gonna say mate 566 from now. Okie doke. Mate 566 again, member for 7 months. More emojis win. Well, how many emojis do you need? I've threw in more emojis for Africa. I got emojis all over the place in the chat now. So I'll see. But I don't know. If you want more, I'll see what I can do. Hemorrhoid Hurts. By the way, I owe you an apology, Hemorrhoid, because there were 2 little tiny super chats at the end of the last stream, which I neglected to bring up. So I'll self-flagellate myself, firstly because I'm a white male, but secondly because of that error. A Minecraft movie. You call that slop? It's more like gruel. And the Chateau Leblanc 68 is supposed to be served slightly chilled. Minecraft movie. I like that. Thanks, Hemorrhoids. Chris Schick for 1999. Keep up the Griat work, man. Happily donating each of you last weekend's per screen average of Disney's Snow White. Yeah, which got beaten by that stupid Chris Statham movie. No, not Chris. What's his name? Jason Statham.
Jason.
In its second week. Right. Ranger Boo for $5. Be careful with saying the Fallout show is bad, or Actman will slander and attack you like the good corporate shill he is. Who's Actman?
Yeah, I've never heard of him.
He's a video game YouTuber, and last few years he is anti woke now.
Oh, that's his thing.
It's a thing for a lot of folks. Somebody emailed me about somebody called Birdman, and I watched one of those videos. That's it's on the rise, and with woke dying, anti-woke is going to have to die, and so anti-woke is going to have to die, and there's going to be a lot of people with nothing to talk about very soon.
But the Fallout show is terrible for reasons that have nothing to do with woke.
I never accused it of being woke. I don't think it is woke. It's just shite. It's very narratively bad, and characters lack motivation, and it's structurally poor, and it's the character actions contradict themselves at times, and then the main character makes a very evil decision, which results in death. It's bad. It's just a bad show.
Well, Floyda for $10. Best superhero trilogy: Raimi Spider-Man, Captain America, or Dark Knight. The third in the Dark Knight is a big letdown, but the first 2 are great, so I'd go Dark Knight trilogy.
I'm going to go Raimi Spider-Man because the first 2 are just great movies, and the third one, fucking Billy Maguire, man, yes. All right, the third one is very Madam Web, so I can really enjoy the third one and get behind it. The Dark Knight is a good movie, although overrated, and there's things I don't like about it. The Dark Knight
starting to date slightly. Yeah, that trilogy.
The Dark Knight Rises is just appalling. I rewatched that recently, and I was shocked at just how bad it was because I'd never watched it since I'd seen it in the cinema. And I remember seeing it in the cinema and thinking, okay, that was dumb and fun, but it's not. It's dumb and boring. Captain America, I don't love, to be honest. Everybody goes on about how great Winter Soldier and Civil War is. I never liked them that much. I think they're good movies, but nothing special.
Oh, Burn the Witch. They're fantastic.
All right. Hemorrhoid Hurts again for $2. Peanut to veg. I sing that to my wife. Pre-quiz. Peanut to veg. Is that a misspelling from Google? Peanut to. Yeah. You must have translated to peanut from peanuts.
The Gene and Bob's.
Yeah. Peanut to vagina. Mate 566 again for another $5. Speaking of playing bad games, when is Platoon playing more Gollum?
I need to finish it still. It's a case of when I have time at the moment. I would like to be able to say this week, but I've also got like 3 or 4 even videos on the go at the moment, so it's time sensitive. Hopefully this week, if not next week.
Could you and Random Film Talk do a simultaneous stream of playing it together? I'd like to.
Well, I've got to do it as a hazing ritual for EFAP, and then Random was doing it for his birthday, and then they've roped him into doing it for the long supercut thing as well. So it's me and Rags is playing it, I think, at the moment too. There's a bunch of us. I'm sure someone else is playing it as well. But yeah, there'll be a big sort of collaboration video at some point of all of that once we've all suffered through the rest of it.
Yeah.
Is it still broken, or did they patch it?
There's no evidence that they've patched it from what I've seen. They might have, but no. I mean, I think it crashes slightly less. That's it. But that might be because lots of people playing it have not turned on Gollum hair simulation, which is the thing that really did break it.
The game did so badly commercially that they didn't want to spend the money to patch it, and they shut down the game studio anyway, so it's just this broken game that will never get fixed.
Yep, there's a lot of that still there. It's quite funny.
Is there a top scars option when you are designing your Gollum?
I don't think so. You just look like Ariana Grande.
Okay, M8566 again. Our last super chat for the day. Maybe I hang out on too many feminist pages. Well, that's not a good start. But what's up with women who are genuinely scared of men and worried that a man will Minecraft them? Well, your guess is as good as mine. But yeah, choosing between a man or a bear to meet in the woods. There was that old thing about a lot of women would choose to be confronted by a bear.
Yes, that was very funny. There's a bit of social contagion going on, I think.
Yeah. Oh, well. Joshua jumps in at the death. What do you like eating and drinking at the movies? Also, do you sneak in food? I know Greg does because I once saw him sneak in a tin bag of popcorn.
Why can't
I don't really eat in the cinema
for all these kids? Jesus,
oh,
what
that's
do you think
true,
I'm going to do in this economy?
I used to like it when they had choc top ice creams, but just like that crackly top of chocolate on it. I used to quite like them, but that was about it.
I do not eat at the movies because I'm not American, but I do drink at the movies heavily because I watch awful shit.
We eat everywhere.
My family go in the morning, so I get a coffee and like a cereal bar.
That's so weird. That's weird.
Well, I go in the morning because I work the night shift, so yeah.
All right. My grandfather, this is not an exaggeration, she used to enjoy eating celery sticks because they were healthy. But can you imagine the crunch sound for patrons around it? Unbelievable.
There's a theater near me that has a restaurant. It's like a big multiplex thing. There's an arcade restaurant, all kind of shit, laser tag, and they'll bring you food to you in the theater. And I like to go there because we'll get. I mean, you get a full meal, potato skins, and you can get a burger and fries. And,
Greg,
it's fabulous.
Is an American movie theater, like especially family movies, is it like a picnic with a movie going on? Is everybody just eating?
Yeah.
No, it's most of them are just popcorn and soda. Like some of them, the one near me does serve food, but it's so I don't ever see anybody actually ordering food there because partly it's like food prices at a sports game. It's absurd and it's not good. So some of them do have food, but I rarely see people actually eating in the theater other than popcorn, maybe candy, box of candy, something like that. It's pretty standard.
Yeah.
Well, this is starting to get like beast up now. All these last minute ones coming in. Hemorrhoid Hurts. $2. My niece calls me Uncle Ass Grapes. Is that wrong? Yes, severely wrong. We need to look into that situation.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's pretty much it for today. Probably my favorite live stream. I've really enjoyed this, fellas. Really discursive, cool chat and everything.
Yeah.
Platoon, thanks for staying up. It's been awesome to have you.
Oh, I've got plenty of work to go off to now, so I'm going to be up for ages. But thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been great. So, Despot, when can the fans expect your huge, new, contentious, groundbreaking new video to drop?
Yes, my analysis of British advertising based on the thesis that it is dystopian propaganda. That should be out in about 3 weeks. It's a long video, so
it's a long
it's taking me a while.
Jeez. Man.
Excited.
I think I look at like 150 ads in the video.
Jeez.
Good.
Greg, I imagine you're going to have something slightly more lighter than that coming up.
Yeah.
You had something about sidekicks. Something about sidekicks dropped today. I haven't quite looked at that yet.
Yeah, that was a fun one. That was Good Trope, Bad Trope. It's a series that I'm trying to revive, just looking at good, bad, middling examples. And there was I was goofing around. There's skits, there's poetry, it's a fun one. I've got the obligatory Minecraft review because I got to just recoup some of my ticket cost. And during that one, I got to glue it together, but I bought a toy recently that makes toys. So I've got a soda holder here that I got to glue together, and I'm going to have that in the video. I'm excited about that one there. But next week, more lighthearted, I'm going to make a video about how Reacher Season 3 is actually fucking fantastic subversion. The best kind. It did it so well. Season 3 of Reacher is unironically fan-fucking-tastic, and I'm going to talk about that next week.
Cool. Platoon, what do you got cooking on the video front?
Too much. Main channel Snow White video is still kind of hanging around like a bad smell. That'll be done soon. Also second channel Minecraft video, and then the main channel Minecraft video. And the vague hope was that they would all come out this week, but that's not going to happen. So eventually they'll all be out, but I don't know exactly when.
Well, I'm interested to see how it performs because, you know, what do viewers want to see from these Minecraft film breakdowns? So it'll be interesting to see how your video goes. And as a last note, kudos to Cynic, who apparently got away with using the C-bomb in his video for Snow White. So well done to him. All very happy. All right, well, it just remains for me to thank the chat, especially all the Brits who stayed up into the early hours on a school night. So we do appreciate that on the channel, and we wish that we could go earlier. We'll try and, I don't know, sort something out. But we do appreciate that very much. And I appreciate all my guests who have been fantastic today on a really good quality stream. So thank you all, and kakitiano and hairera, and we'll see you on the next stream.